Warning: this podcast features adult subject matter, adult language, and things not meant for children to hear. Viewer discretion is advised. You've been warned. Take two. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. We're back again. Fucking OBS. Back live on the I'm No Joe YouTube channel. Deja vu kind of feels like we just did this. I get this impending feeling like we've done this before, but fuck it, we're going to do it again anyways. So thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for tuning in to the newest episode of the I'm No Joe podcast, the show where every armchair quarterback can feel like an Eddie Bravo. We're having all kinds of trouble tonight. We're doing it live. That's how it goes sometimes. So fuck it. As is the case, most weeks we have got a wonderful panel of folks here to get into the shenanigans and shit talking with me. Currently, our Wednesday night combat compatriot is preoccupied. He will be back with us shortly. But other than that, we also have the freshest guest a man could ask for, Mr. Fresh03 himself. How you doing tonight, sir?
Doing all right. How are you, brother?
I'm surviving. I'd be better if OPS wanted to play fair, but, you know, we work with what we got.
Yeah.
So
It has been fighting everybody.
it really has. Everybody's been having an issue with it lately. So we're just going to do what we can and try and push on through. So for those of you who are somehow unaware, last night during UFC Fight Night 171 live from Jacksonville, Florida, we actually did our very first Combat Compatriots live commentary show right along with the fights. Unfortunately, as is kind of the theme for the week, last minute UFC pushed the show back an hour, so we do have a little bit of filler talk in the beginning there, but we broke down and live commentated every single fight on the entire card last night. It is there for your viewing pleasure on the YouTube channel. That one will not be going to all audio because that's a long fucking podcast and that would just be a little too much, I feel, for pretty much anybody to sit and listen to. But if you need something for your afternoon background noise, we got you covered there on YouTube. But seeing as how we did have an event last night, but we also have an event coming up on Saturday, UFC Fight Night 172, hence the name of the show. We're going to do things a little bit differently this evening. Unluckily, depending on how you look at it, we didn't have a whole ton of news to go over this week, especially seeing as how we had the recap show Sunday, we had the live stream last night. Wasn't a whole lot of time for news to come out, so we do have a few things we'll go over, but then we're going to take a moment to kind of recap and talk about some of the highlights and the important points and the takeaways from last night's UFC Fight Night 171 before we get into our predictions and breakdowns for Saturday's upcoming UFC Fight Night 172, as it were. So, jumping right in, tippy top of the news here. For those of you who did not catch last weekend's UFC 249 show, there are three takeaways that need to be mentioned from that event. First and foremost, Jeremy Stephens is the only person to have missed weight for UFC 249. He rolled into a 145-pound fight at 150.5 pounds naked with the hoop of shame. He proceeded to get his ass kicked for it, but that's not the point. The point is he showed up so fucking far from weight when he's been saying all week he's ready, nothing's going to stop him, talking all kinds of shit about Calvin, so kind of got a little bit of a quick karma there. Another interesting takeaway, Dominic Cruz got beat by Henry Cejudo for the 135-pound belt, and Henry Cejudo immediately used his post-fight speech to retire from MMA. That left a obvious glaring hole in the 135-pound division, so when asked about it in the post-fight press conference, Dana White said unflinchingly and immediately, it's Peter Yan and someone. We don't know who the someone is. We will make some phone calls and get in touch with the top guys, see who's healthy, see who's able, see who makes sense. But as of right now, 100% it's Peter Yan and someone to be fighting for the newly vacant 135-pound belt. So
that was the best news to come out of that press conference.
that was one of the best little sound bites you could have asked for in that particular post conference. I absolutely agree. The negative, because there was some bad things that did come out of 249. There was a lot of positive, a lot of good things came out of 249, but not everything. And we kind of suspected it was going to go this way, but again, in a situation like this, there's no way to know for sure. You have to let it play out. Turns out Wednesday evening, last Wednesday, not last night, last Wednesday, the UFC was made aware of Jacare testing positive, with the possibility of it being a false positive, for the Backstreet Boys reunion. Due to it there being a possibility of a false positive, they kept him around for the next couple days during the weigh-ins, during the official face-offs, where they didn't actually come face-to-face. They didn't actually touch each other. They all wore gloves. They all wore masks, the whole 9 yards. But turns out on Friday, they confirmed not only did Jacare have the Backstreet Boys, but 2 of his cornermen also had the Backstreet Boys. So they were taken to a hospital and quarantined immediately. Re-sterilization process was completely put into place in the arena, along with the hotel, and all of the equipment and all of the people that he had come in contact with were then retested an additional 2 times on top of the already mandatory tests. That's the extent of the bad part, because as of yesterday, Jacare and his cornermen are both said to be on their way to recovery. No negative, no fatal, no seriously bad effects from the Backstreet Boys. And as of now, no one else from that show, either personnel for the UFC or fighters or the event staff, and none of them have come up positive since then, and they have all been retested multiple times. So the good thing, if there is a good thing in this situation, is that we know the testing works. They did over 1,100 tests in a week just for the UFC 249 event. 3 people got caught with the Backstreet Boys. And as of right now, it looks like no one else got it, that things were kept contained, properly sterilized, that everything was done to keep that as safe as it could be.
That's a huge high mark for them.
That's
as much as you hate to
huge,
see there be a positive in there, you got to think how many people were being tested that are working the facility.
Absolutely.
All of the fighters and everything. It was bound to happen with as widespread as this reunion tour is.
Yep.
Somebody was bound to catch it, but how they dealt with it was phenomenal.
Exactly.
So that's a huge high mark, and hopefully that's something everyone else can learn from on how to deal with it when you're dealing with these types of sporting events.
And yeah, I mean, this is as ideal of a circumstance as you could for this sort of thing.
Yep.
You know, people coming down with Backstreet Boys fever, as we'll call it, the Backstreet Boys fever.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, this is as positive of a thing as you could hope for. You know, it's caught. The people were caught. Immediately went to recovery. Everything went into effect.
Yep.
And nobody else came down with it. You know, it's positive. It's a positive thing for sports as a whole, because, you know, we're just dying for sports. So
Absolutely.
It's a positive thing to show that, yeah, if the testing and precautions are in place, you can control the narrative of what the Backstreet Boys are going to do when they come to your town for one of their shows.
Right. Well, and as a perfect example of that, the next thing that I actually wanted to mention real quick is that directly quoted as a result of the success and the beautiful execution of UFC 249 being put on, as of Tuesday this week, Major League Baseball has officially been given the go-ahead to resume a no-fan shortened season starting in July, based specifically off the success of UFC 249. They were directly citing the fact that the UFC was able to put on such an intense event with people who had to be close to each other in certain situations during the event, and still did so safely and securely, that they have no doubt that with a larger staff, more resources, and more preparation time, as well as a good example set for them, the MLB should be able to get this summer kicked off and get some games going. There are going to be modifications to the season. There's going to be modifications to the leagues, the league itself, modifications to how they're going to put matches together. But sports are starting to come back, and it literally is being directly attributed to the success of 249 being put on. Now, that brings us to a little bit more bizarre news, I think would be a good word for it here. Back into the world of combat sports, I won't say so much MMA, but kind of. There is a gentleman who at one point was a very poor amateur mixed martial artist who then turned luchador, who was a mediocre luchador, then became a fairly successful professional wrestler who then tried to backstep into MMA again, but seeing as how they weren't that great from the beginning, when they came back, it went fairly poorly as well, and then they kind of faded into obscurity for a small period of time here. That individual I'm talking about here is Alberto Del Rio, known by several different names, most recently notable for his fight in Combat Americas against Tito Ortiz, which lasted all of 47 seconds before he was quickly dispatched by a fairly noticeably aging Tito. Ordinarily, that would have been the last we would have seen of Mr. Del Rio, and he would have ridden his jalopy horse off into the broke-ass sunset, and nobody would worry about him any the wiser the rest of their days. Unfortunately, we are in a position now where we have to talk about Mr. Del Rio once again, and not surprisingly, not for the greatest of reasons.
This is one of the worst reasons.
This is kind of the example that we use, in that not everyone who is able to fight is meant for a career in combat sports. And this, not to get too far into a caveat here, but I do want to make a point to mention that this is a great example of why I am so fucking emphatic about people like Tony Ferguson getting a legitimate mental health assessment done on them. And he won't. Because otherwise you end up with gentlemen like Mr. Del Rio, who, it was announced this week, has been brought under federal charges for domestic abuse and aggravated sexual assault. He was found, he was arrested, and he has unofficially pled guilty. He has, I believe the phrasing that they used is, confirmed suspected parts of the story they were given that led to his arrest. So apparently one of his on-again, off-again girlfriends had a, I'm using air quotes for those listening, crush on a fellow mixed martial artist. And when Mr. Del Rio came home one night, heard rumors of said crush, confronted his girlfriend about it, and then proceeded to beat the shit out of her and rape her for 17 hours straight. So he's in jail right now, and hopefully we don't have to see or talk about that piece of shit anymore, because if convicted, like Voldemort and other pieces of shit on this channel, he will no longer be discussed under any circumstances. But I felt that in this moment, so that people are aware that pieces of shit like this exist, we will take just this small moment and make the exception to give him his time in the spotlight, so that everyone knows why we won't be talking about him in the future.
Yeah. And he has a history of domestic abuse.
There was several lesser charges on his record when they started to dig into his past.
Yeah. And the gal from Fighting with My Family, I'm not sure anybody here watched that. It's a great movie. Sierra Knight, she goes by Paige in the WWE. She was dating this guy for quite a while, and she was engaged to him as well. And there were several cases where he beat the shit out of her. And so, I mean, the dude was a pretty good professional wrestler. He was WWE champion multiple times.
Right.
During his run. He was let go from the company not once but twice. Made his comeback, and they were talking about letting him back in for a third time right before all this went down. Obviously, he's not coming back because the WWE has a zero tolerance policy if you're convicted of anything for this sort of thing.
Yep. Which, hats off to them for that. In an industry, obviously, where we have Voldemort fighting for fucking paychecks, hats off to Vince McMahon for having the balls to stand up and set a fucking line in the sand of morality. I appreciate that.
Yeah, but yeah, he's had charges brought up against him, and nothing's ever stuck. I know the reports are Page wouldn't say anything bad about him during their fling or whatever the fuck it was. But yeah, this guy's always struck me as kind of a piece of shit. And when this story came up, I was like, that doesn't surprise me at all that he did something like this. Like, just based on his personality and his past, this seems like this totally is in line with something that he would do.
Fits
And
the character he was set out.
Someone like me who does not have a degree in psychology, I've taken a couple psychology courses, can take one look at this dude and say, yeah, there's something off.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there should be some sort of a screening, especially with people getting their heads battered in.
Yeah. Because CTE doesn't make violence friendlier.
No, it doesn't. It makes things escalate quite quickly. And as much as we don't like to talk about the one thing that happened in the past, a great example of this is Chris Benoit.
Yes, very true. Yeah. Very true.
Chris Benoit, one of the gentlest,
one of the legends,
nicest human beings on the planet from all accounts, just goes off the fucking deep end.
Yeah.
Because of CTE. So,
and that's one of those things that, as educated fans, we try to be kind of vocal about, because even though the industry might not want to talk about it, we're all very, very aware of where this road ends if it doesn't get nipped in the bud early on.
Yeah. And so there should be, I mean, there are CTE screenings out there. I know that the UFC currently doesn't force people to, but it might be, it might be a good idea, like once a year, you've got to go take your CTE.
Get your shit checked, to make
otherwise
sure.
Otherwise, you're not fighting in the company. And that would certainly get somebody like Tony Ferguson, like, hey, dude, you got to get checked. You're under contract with us for X number of fights.
Right.
You're not fighting anywhere else. You have to do this.
Yeah.
That would. Tony Ferguson's crazy as shit. I don't know necessarily if it's CTE. He might just be.
Right. Yeah. It could just be that's how it was wired from the get-go. But my point is my point is that we didn't quite get to this extreme of a situation, but we really did have a fairly similar situation with Tony just a little over a year ago. And again, this is one of those situations that kind of got swept under the rug because everybody wanted to see that Tony Khabib fight. Everybody wanted to see Tony back in the spotlight. But Tony locked his wife in a fucking closet, kidnapped his kid, and went on a high-speed fucking chase that the LA County sheriffs had to fucking pull him over during. That's not something to be taken lightly, and that's a clear sign of some form of mental instability that, as a fucking fan, I don't want to see turn into a horrible situation down the road if we can just get him some fucking help now. I don't want to see Tony turn into Del Rio.
Yeah.
Well, any fighter, it doesn't matter who they are. You can,
right.
The name is Tony is or some relatively unknown. It doesn't matter. They all need to fall into that same situation. I think the one problem the UFC is going to have with it is because they, air quotes here, subcontract all of their fighters. The only way that they're going to make something like that happen is if it falls under something to the nature of where, like a USADA type thing, where you must
that's what I was thinking.
Tested, where it falls under like the local commissions to enforce those types of things.
Right.
Well, that's the thing is UFC, with them being subcontractors, they do still have contracts with these people.
Right.
And they can hold it over their head and be like, you can't fight anywhere else until you get screened. So it's within their rights if they institute this because there's provisions for extra medical exams in their contracts. As long as the UFC is paying for it. I mean,
that's what I was going to say. I think it would kind of fall under the lines of like a Mike Perry, where he said that he wanted his nose broken so that he could get that shit fixed on the UFC dime. I think in the same vein, you should get your fucking USADA testing, your medical coverage, and your mental stability certification all covered by the UFC, but make it fucking mandatory. So we don't see a Benoit or another Del Rio situation down the road with a guy that we love from legitimate MMA.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a really sad thing because we're continuing to see it pop up, and not just in the MMA world. You're seeing it in other sporting worlds where there are contact football. You're even
Football is
seeing it in soccer and places like that.
Soccer's
where,
getting it a lot lately too. That's another thing that a lot of people don't mention. FIFA actually had to do an internal investigation last year on the results or the probability of soccer players developing CTE because they're starting to see so many fucking soccer players who've been playing for years and years, and you take those fucking hits and you take the slams and the falls, and then down the road you start to get that fucking weird change in behavior. The personality starts to develop a little differently, and it's like there's a correlation, and we can show you directly here, folks.
and not just the slams and falls with them. Think amount of headers that those guys do while they're
Yeah,
in the middle
clicking
of the game.
into a fucking shot. Yeah.
Yeah, slinging their head into a ball that's coming at them at like 30 miles an hour because somebody booted the piss out of it.
Right.
I mean,
I've done a couple headers. I mean, it doesn't hurt that bad, but
Not in the moment.
my nuts and bolts are definitely not all there where they're supposed to be. I can confirm that. So I don't know that had anything to do with doing headers.
Right.
But and that's the thing is it might not hurt right there, but
Down the road.
of course, a lifetime of a player. You look at some of those players. Look at how long Ronaldo's been around, or
Yeah, no shit.
You look at those types of players over the lifetime of their career. That can definitely be a problem, and it's more prominent in a combat sports arena because you're getting punched in the face, you're getting kicked in the face.
That's what you signed up for, yeah.
Yeah, whether it's Muay Thai, whether it's boxing, kickboxing, MMA, anything where there is some sort of thing being thrown at your head, it's gonna happen. It's the nature of the beast, and to be honest, they do need to test for it. And that goes the same for even professional wrestling. Those guys
absolutely.
get fucking dropped on their heads
Some of the fucking moves that those guys do, even though they do it safely, I'm using air quotes for those listening, even if it's done safely, some of the giant fucking maneuvers that those guys do, just coming off a 15-foot, 10-foot onto that fucking ring, is enough, even if there's just a slight off in the fucking landing, that'll do it, man.
Yeah. And there are treatments for CTE at this point.
There are, there are
That's
some.
Another thing that we're not talking about is there are treatments. If you look at the situation with Daniel Bryan, aka Bryan Danielson, aka the American Dragon, aka the best wrestler in the world.
Yes.
He was put on the shelf.
For a minute.
The shelf.
Yeah, for a minute.
It was
no, not 6 months.
No, it was
years.
It was 2 years. Yeah, 2.5 years, I think.
I think it was longer than that.
Was it?
Wow. Yeah, it was a long. It was a long time before and he had to go get independently treated, because of all the concussions and the CTE that was going on. He went out and got independently treated, and now he's able to go back into the ring and do what he loves. So there are treatments out there because he was able to negate all the effects that were going on and get himself back to being non-symptomatic.
Nice.
So
very cool.
Yeah.
And
so there is a road through
great
it.
Success story. Yeah. And so far from what everybody's observed, and because he has to go get checked independently after every single
periodically.
Match.
Nice.
No, not periodically. Every single match he has to go get checked again. Yeah, so I mean, he's come back, wrestled in some matches that looked absolutely brutal. Like his match with Brock Lesnar that he had not long ago was like it was tough to watch because he was just slamming him. And thus far, I mean, he hasn't shown any relapse symptoms. So there are treatments out there for this sort of thing.
That's cool to hear.
You know, the thing with CTEs that I think everybody forgets is that it is similar to a TBI.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
Unfortunately, everybody knows exactly what a TBI is. And because it's been made a major thing since you've seen a lot of soldiers coming back from war with TBIs from IED explosions, fucking crashes, whatever. Exactly. I've got a lot of friends who have them.
Likewise.
I can say I was lucky enough not to have one, but CTE is like the dirty cousin of it that nobody wants to talk about, and it needs to be talked about more because they're very similar in nature.
Yeah. And being a TBI guy and combat veteran, it takes a lot to kind of get those symptoms under control. Like the short-term memory loss, I mean, that's never going away. But the radical changes in your mood, the just the way your mind reacts to things. Like you kind of have to go through a rewiring process, and you have to go sit down and talk to people, and you never want to talk to people about this sort of stuff.
Right.
Too macho to talk about stuff like that, and I think that could be a big thing that holds back treatments as well. I mean, you're starting to see it become more acceptable for veterans to go talk to people, and usually once you're there and you're talking to other veterans who've been through the things that you've been through, it gets easier. But there's absolutely zero system in place like the VA for guys from the UFC. Like how many of these crazy bastards are running around out there?
Right. Yeah. No shit. Think about the Don Fries and the fucking Dan Severns of the fucking world unleashed.
Yeah.
And even guys that have never made it big, that have been in smaller promotions.
Yeah,
there's plenty of them out there that are suffering from the same thing. That
I was going to say almost more so those guys, because they never make it to the big time to get the recognition, but a lot of those no-name guys get the shit beat out of them week after fucking week after week, and will travel to do it to try and get that chance at the big league. So how many of these guys that never get a name end up with CTE just in the attempt to get to the big show?
Yeah.
It's definitely something that needs to be taken seriously and be brought more to the forefront, especially with companies like the UFC, Bellator, ONE FC. Those guys should all be at the forefront.
Fuck yeah.
This research, yeah.
Like,
but I mean, you saw it with the NFL. Like,
yeah,
they just lied until they got
until they had no
caught.
choice. Yeah, until they had no choice but to come over.
Yeah,
and it cost them what, $3 billion?
Something like 3 or 4 billion. Yeah.
Starting. Cost them
just
initially. Starting.
yeah, no, it's a weird situation.
So.
Hopefully we get some legitimate progress in that field as it relates to combat sports specifically in the near future. Hopefully. Fucking hopefully. Next little story I want to talk about is kind of, it's not the same type of story, but it's another example of kind of the hypocrisies within combat sports organizations by and large. This is actually a recurrence story, which makes it even more frustrating. On one hand, I will give the UFC a lot of credit. They have come a long way from the early days of the initiation of USADA to any sort of randomized testing to trying to legitimize the sport to where we are today. We have come a long way. The old sniff test, as they used to call it, just used to be what you needed to pass to get into the ring. If a guy looked at you and said, you're a fighter, you were good. That used to be literally the definition of the test. We're a little more complicated than that here in 2020. We have gas chromatography, fucking words. We've got mass spectrometers. We've got legitimate science to be able to detect nanoparticles and picograms of illicit substances within a person's system. We've also at the same time acknowledged that low levels of certain substances and certain substances in general have no performance enhancing benefit and are slowly being removed from the contraband list. Unfortunately, the UFC, like most corporations and larger organizations, drag their fucking feet on any kind of change. And in this situation, the feet dragging has kind of got one of our more notable fighters caught up once again. So I will say, this is a bit of a controversial topic, and I can see both sides of the issue. But before we get into it, let me just tell you, this is the second time in 5 years Kelvin Gastelum has been suspended for marijuana use. This during the UFC's active roll down of their tolerance break or tolerance exception limit for THC or cannabis in their systems. We're at a point now where literally the requirement is less than 180 nanograms per million on the day of fighting, which essentially means, for those of you who are laymen to this, you can't smoke any weed the day you wake up to fight. You can smoke all night the night before, pass out with a blunt in your fucking mouth, but when you wake up, drink some water, don't smoke any weed till after you box or you fight, and then you're fine. So I understand there's a little bit of a controversy here because Kelvin Gastelum has tested positive again for his fight back in November for over 180 nanograms of marijuana in his system on fight day. The punishment they gave Mr. Gastelum for his second cannabis offense was the exact same as his first offense. It was a total of 9 months suspended from combat, reduced by 5 months for completing an outpatient drug treatment rehabilitation 15-day program. He is officially re-eligible to fight as of right now once the story broke, but the bigger issue to me is that fucking really? For one, look at what happened to that man in November. That had no part to play from him possibly taking a hit off a joint that morning before he fought. There's some scrupulous standards in terms of 180 nanograms still being the limit. But on the other side of that, I also understand you're a fucking professional. You know what the limitations you are allowed to get up to are, and you still, during literally one of the most important fights of your fucking career, jeopardize that by smoking out that morning, which he admitted to. There's a whole kitten and yarn ball of what the fuck to be unpacked just in this weird story alone. I don't know who to yell at more, because clearly Kelvin Gastelum is in the wrong for knowingly violating the fucking rules. But at the same time, the UFC has constantly acknowledged that there is no performance enhancing effect derived from cannabis, so that it doesn't belong on the testing list, and they are in the active process of removing it slowly but surely so it doesn't have an immediate removal effect. They want to downplay it and drag their fucking heels, like I mentioned. So I feel like as little of a story as this could be, it really almost has to be a bigger story because both parties are fucking up.
Yep, I'm of the same mindset. To be quite honest, number one, the UFC just needs to remove it from their testing pool, period. Two, Kelvin, I want to put this in the most PC way possible. You're fucking stupid. That's about as PC as I can get this. Your livelihood is fighting. You do a fantastic job. Yes, you've had some really tough fights as of late. But why the fuck would you smoke the morning of a fight? Look, I get it. You smoke, you wake and bake, whatever. That's fine. It'll be out of your system by fucking 11 o'clock that night. You're not going to be fucking high no more when it's time for you to go fight in the co-main event because you're not main event material anymore. But on the other side of that, why does the UFC still have that in testing pool? Look, I get it. There's always been this whole, let's go back to the 20s, fucking
Reefer madness.
Reefer madness still going on in this day and age when we see that it is no different than drinking. In fact, look, I like to have a drink myself, but in my own personal opinion, it's safer to smoke. It's safer to fucking dab, eat your edibles, whatever it is you're doing, however you're consuming to enjoy yourself. And look, if you're using it as a medicinal purpose after you're done with your fight to relax, help heal, fucking go for it, dude. But don't be stupid and don't do it the day of the fight. That is the only time that I think that they should test for it is fight day.
Yeah.
After that, after the fight is over, do not test them for that after the fight.
Yep.
But make them piss the morning of. If they pop hot, yeah, suspend them. Guess what? And don't give them credit. No, give them the fucking sentence. Make them sit it out because you're stupid enough
Gotta learn
to not follow one simple rule. If you went anything but the day of, you'd be okay. You smoke the day before, the day after, just not the day of the fight. Look, that's like any other thing you're doing. Are you going to crack a beer the morning of a fight?
Hope not.
No.
I fucking hope not.
the only person I could possibly see doing that would be Cowboy Cerrone. And even he's not that fucking stupid to do so.
Big Ben Rothwell, he'd totally do it.
Oh, well, Big Ben might.
That's true. Ben might crack one in the morning. That's true. But that's near here.
I'm sure he cracked one last night. You know.
Yeah, no
but
shit.
either way, it's for me. It's a double-edged sword. He knows the rules in place, so he shouldn't have done it. The rules shouldn't be there except for the day of the fight. And to be honest, that's the only time I see that rule applying.
Yeah.
You shouldn't be taking anything the day of the fight other than water, eating yourself some breakfast and some lunch. I would forego dinner just because, fighting on a full stomach's probably not going to be a great idea for you. But, don't take anything the day of. You shouldn't even be fucking no CBD even during that day. Just nix everything that's normal during the day.
Right.
Just a regular day. That's it. At that point, test them for it only on that day. But UFC needs to have USADA remove that from the pool completely. The fact that they still test for it is fucking retarded. I mean, how many states do we have that it's legal recreationally? And then
look at the side of the cage. Look at the side of the cage. CBDMD is one of the biggest sponsors of the UFC these days. They're literally sponsored by a fucking cannabis company that only sells CBD portions. But it's still fucking cannabis.
Yep. And then on top of it, how many states have it medical marijuana as legal?
Yeah, 38.
At this point, just remove it completely, because the only time that it should fall under something where there's a legality issue is if you're fighting in a state where it is illegal.
Agreed.
If that's the case, just don't fucking do it.
That's right, yeah, you're under local jurisdiction.
Yeah, at that point, yeah, test them during those ones, fine, because they know they're under local jurisdictions. Everywhere else, fuck it, remove it.
Agreed.
So, as it stands right now, this is I get to be the heel for once. As it stands right now, it's federally illegal.
Yep.
States legalizing it for recreation, all that stuff. There's at some point the federal government, which will never do it, could come down and say no. It's still a Schedule I narcotic. So USADA being a national testing pool has to have some sort of a standard for it, because it is considered a Schedule I narcotic at this point. Don't blame the UFC for dragging their feet. They've made a hell of an allowance. All you have to do is not smoke the day of your fight. That's right. You come in, don't drink, don't smoke. Don't drink, don't smoke. Show the fuck up, fight, leave. Then you can go do whatever the fuck you want.
Right.
Once again, this falls into, in my opinion, this falls completely on the fighter. Like, you are a professional fighter. You can't hold the fuck out for 12 hours from when you wake up.
I would agree, save for one part.
And they gave him a light sentence. A light one.
Right.
There's people who've been suspended way longer for way less.
Absolutely.
So,
the only counterpoint I would put to that is that, and it's kind of I get that it's a bit of mental gymnastics to do, but you also have to realize that at this point, literally, like we just said with MLB, the NFL, MLB, and the NHL have all been taking their direct cues from the UFC, how they care for their employees, how they go about changing legislation and rules for them, how they've adjusted the USADA pool to the extent that as of this year, both the NFL and the MLB have completely removed cannabis from their testing regimens completely.
Yeah, and the NBA...
That's why I come down on the UFC so hard for dragging their feet.
Yeah, the NBA, what they've done is they have a similar limit.
Right. Yeah.
Through the UFC.
They're basically on the same page as the UFC.
But then at a certain point of the season, before it gets rolling too deep, they completely cut that off. They completely cut out cannabis as something that is being tested for when they do their random drug tests. And then, I mean, by the time you get to the playoffs, I mean, dudes are like yacked up on roids, and
no one gives a shit.
His body pressing people into the crowd.
Yeah.
Like the NBA's got its own issues, but you're seeing it more and more because it does have medical uses, and it's been proven at this point. And the U.S. is being stupid, and it's a direct result of the people that we have in Congress and the Senate.
All
Like
the way up. Yep.
there are people still from the Reefer Madness era sitting in a seat,
In positions of power, yeah.
pushing their outdated ideals onto modern society, and it doesn't work. And hashtag vote them out. Anyway, hashtag vote them all out.
Absolutely.
All incumbents gone. That'd be what I would like to see.
I
But
agree. Hashtag
that's
reelect
neither.
nobody.
Yeah, all this is neither here nor there. I mean, this falls on Kevin. He knew the standards,
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
The UFC has very relaxed standards as far as marijuana goes. Do not smoke on the day of a fight. It's the same thing. Don't wake up, take 6 shots of fucking whiskey, and show up half in the fucking bag for your fight.
Yeah, no shit.
It's irresponsible. It's fucking dangerous. I don't think someone who's high is dangerous in a fight. Not nearly so as someone who's drunk.
Yeah, absolutely agree.
The only danger they are is to themselves because their reaction time is going to be slow.
Exactly. Hey, wait, what?
Right, thunk.
So I have, like I said, I have zero for Kevin Gastelum. I have zero pity for him. He's eligible to fight again.
Yep.
It's stupid that they're testing for THC of any sort in professional sports because it does help the athletes. It helps
Absolutely.
the athletes quite a bit. And there is no performance enhancement. Anybody who's ever been high knows that there is no performance enhancement from being high.
No, not in a sport where speed is the key.
Yep.
No.
As a big proponent for cannabis myself, it's not the time and place to consider that a performance enhancement in any stretch of the imagination.
Like a professional gymnast, like a high professional gymnast they're sitting there going for a vault and they might just stop on the vault and spend about 5 minutes there contemplating life. So what? Stick the landing.
Right.
Stick the landing in a couple of minutes, man. So yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But moving along to some more interesting recent news we've got here. Coming back in towards this week, we've got a couple little pieces from 249 that I need to finish up with real quick here. The first one of the most controversial moments of the evening was the stoppage in the Dominic Cruz-Henry Cejudo match. Dominic Cruz came out immediately that night and doubled down the next day in his statements to say that he believes that Keith Peterson was under the influence and said, and I quote, he smelled like cigarettes and booze when he reached down to stop the fight. The interesting part about that is that as of right now, there's no situation where a fighter has any control or influence over the referee in their match, and no grounds to appeal a decision that referee has made. Only the ultimate decision of the match being stopped in a fighter's best interest or not, which doesn't come down to the referee's personal feelings or their personal situation. So there unfortunately isn't a way to find out if Keith Peterson was actually under the influence or not. I will say the interesting counterpoint, I guess it would be to that, is that not only did Keith Peterson say that was a ridiculous thing for Dominic Cruz to suggest, he went so far as to go full fucking savage and roast Dominic the next morning by posting a meme that someone made of Dominic mid-fall down, all kinds of wobble, titled, "The feeling you get the next morning after you were all booze and cigaretted up."
I laughed hysterically when I seen that.
I laughed way harder than I should have because I understand that if that is a legitimate complaint and he was making a legitimate grievance and there's no other way to air that, that is a very serious accusation to make. On the other side of that coin, Keith Peterson is every bit the professional that Dominic Cruz is, and then was turned around and put right back into work Wednesday night refereeing more matches, which leads you to believe the UFC doesn't have any faith in that claim either. So then we're left in this weird what-if situation because you've got someone like Dominic Cruz who is a decade-plus professional of one of the most highest orders of morality and genuine sportsmanship that we know of right now. And then on that same platform, you've got Keith Peterson, who's been a referee almost as long as Dominic has been a fighter and has never really had any kind of a controversial issue up until Dominic has made these claims.
You know, I think what irks me the most about this situation, yeah, Dominic, complete professional has always been. I've never heard him say anything bad about a ref ever until now, which that does throw a little flag off in my head.
Right?
However, I think part of that is the fighter in him being upset that he thinks it was stopped too soon. Now, where I get nervous about this, he's also an active commentator for the UFC, and a very good one at that. Where is this going to sway when he's commentating a fight that Peterson is in charge of and possible controversial stoppage comes in?
Right.
What is he going to stay at that point? Because he has to remain down the line. And I think that could put in a little bit of a problem there. The way that Peterson has handled this, I think it's fucking brilliant.
Absolutely. I 100% agree with
You
that.
know what? Fuck it. If you're going to accuse me of something and I know I didn't do it, I'm going to roast the fuck out of you for being a dumb shit.
Yep.
What I want to see happen is I want to see Dominic say, you know what? I was fucking wrong for saying that. I was mad. I was upset. I didn't know how to get my feelings out because I just lost.
In the moment,
Look,
yeah.
It happens. If it's an in the moment thing, look, that's forgivable. But if you don't go back and you ever retract what you said there and nothing comes of this, that's a bald-faced lie, and there's a fucking problem there.
That's a bad black eye that's going to end up on a fucking resume of a legitimate legend in the fucking sport.
And the only other question I have to that is, when Dominic said that, did the UFC or the governing body or the commission go and check out Peterson at all?
Do some kind of investigation, yeah, even if it's just precursory.
Yeah, just as a cautionary thing. Did you make him take a breathalyzer after everything was said
something,
done?
yeah.
You know,
Are they not doing a breathalyzer before he goes in the ring?
Yeah, and I wouldn't be surprised if they do check the refs for that because they're in charge of somebody's fucking life.
Yeah, they're legally responsible at that point.
Fighter safety, yeah.
Once that cage closes.
And
do we know the protocol for refs? Is there a protocol for refs?
I was going to say, I was looking, I couldn't find any kind of a regulatory protocol. From everything that I found, it's all based on the UFC's jurisdiction and their judgment.
I mean, if there's no protocol in place, then someone like Dominic Cruz coming out and saying something like that, Dominic Cruz doesn't make shit up.
Right, and he doesn't throw accusations around half-heartedly either.
Yeah.
Well, and he didn't throw any out when fucking he got beat by Cody Garbrandt either. So
exactly. So there's something to be said about this whole situation. I think it's a little odd.
There's something fishy on either end, and I don't know which end it is, because generally, as the consummate professional that Dominic Cruz has been, you wouldn't expect him to say something like that lightly or with malicious intent.
Right.
And if this was done in a malicious intent because he's pissed off, fuck him. If it was something heat of the moment, apologize for the shit. Be like, look, I was wrong to say that shit. Move on with your life.
Yeah.
If Peterson was wrong and found to be wrong, and he was doing that shit, then he needs to be fucking adjudicated out and given his time off.
This is more than anything. This shit, like if Dominic Cruz said something like this, I want to know.
Yeah,
I want to let me know what the testing protocols are for refs. If there's no testing protocols in place for refs going into the cage, there needs to be. Right. Put them under, give them the same fucking standards that the fighters have.
Same USADA that the guys get in the ring in. Yeah, exactly. Well, and the other thing about it is that we saw Keith Peterson, like I said, come back for last night's UFC Fight Night 171, and there wasn't a single controversial issue with him or anyone else during the event.
Yeah.
No. And I think the biggest thing that blows my mind here is, look, Dominic Cruz, if it's controversial stoppage, just be like, look, I didn't agree with it. Move along.
Right.
But coming back around here, there does need to be something in place for the refs that they should be checked before they go in. Look, we know 99.9% of the time those refs are on point. Look, we've seen some controversial stoppages. However, This is the discretion of the referee because it is their job to act as the gatekeeper to that person's life. And I don't say to save them from harm. That's their fucking life. If they don't do their job correctly, that can fuck that person's life up. Maybe because it breaks an arm and it forces them out of competition for 2 years. Maybe because they end up with a fucking TBI because you let him get beat on too long.
Right.
Or you let the guy get choked too long. They are literally the lifeline. They should have a protocol in place checking these guys before they go in. And I know, look, we get controversial stoppages, but again, this is always where we say referee's discretion. You should have been doing something else.
Right.
The one we saw a couple weeks ago where the guy was obviously not injured, but from the angle the ref was at,
Right.
he couldn't see that. So you fucked yourself. But at the same point, they do need to have something in place because if they don't and accusations like these come up, they don't have a leg to fucking stand on.
Yep.
They can't say, well, yeah, we checked him beforehand. Or,
yeah, I mean,
yeah,
there has to be some sort of protocol to get into
it's got to
place.
be, I think, not for the fighters, but for the refs, for their own safety.
I think this goes for
Job
any
security.
sport, though. Don't you?
Yeah, I
Do I?
agree.
Don't you think that this should go for any sport? Like, if the players have to go through this, then everybody has to go through this.
Yeah,
I
it's-
agree. I think the officiating teams or the officiating staff in whatever sport, be it the referees we're talking about for fucking MMA, the umpire for a fucking baseball game, if the dude's stepping up to grab that fucking bat, has to piss in the cup, so should the guy who judges whether the swing he took with that bat was legit or not. Should also have to piss
Oh
in the
yeah, you're working for the same fucking company. Take the exact same tests.
I agree. And
Oh,
I think that
don't get
if
me
it
wrong.
isn't in place yet, I think that would be something great to put into place going forward. If you're going to be a referee in a fucking UFC match and you're going to step in there between those two guys, you have to be in the USADA pool just the fucking same as they do.
Yeah, you can't be high when you're in there. You can't be all ripped up on PCP or
Yep. Because
whatever.
we know that several of the referees that are frequently used for the UFC are not only black belts and martial arts practitioners themselves, but very big proponents of cannabis as well. Because some of them not only take part in, but also referee for the high roller BJJ, where it's mandatory to smoke before you compete. So we know that some of these referees partake, and it's not outside the realm of possibility to fathom that an adult who would referee a fight would be inclined to go home and enjoy an adult spirit that evening. So I think testing across the board is a great fucking idea.
Yeah, I'm 100% for it. Anything that keeps the checks and balances, because look, they do need to have the checks and balances. I mean, you're toying with people's lives as a
Fuck
referee.
yeah.
And I don't mean toying because you're not toying in it, but you're
Right.
literally you're the gatekeeper of, does this person continue on about life normally? Do they lose their job?
Right, their future's quite literally in your hands.
Yeah, and lightly because they have to dictate their own future, but at the same time, you dictate whether that person lives the next day or not.
Yep, absolutely. And it's one of those things that I hope we see some advancement in sooner rather than later. Couple of interesting things here about 249 real quick, and then we will jump into some recaps for last night's UFC 171 card. First one, just want to mention, no real need to fucking get into discussion because there's already plenty of it out there about it, but immediately following the end of the match between Tony Ferguson and Justin Gaethje, which ended up completely different than literally just about everyone on the planet imagined it was going to, Conor McGregor, as per the usual at this point in time, immediately grabbed his phone and took to Twitter and said that Khabib is a bottled champion, that Tony, while being a warrior, just got chopped the fuck down, and that he was going to be the one to face Justin Gaethje next, and he was going to, and I quote, fucking murder him. Obviously, that is par for the course at this point. Anytime anyone in the lightweight division gets a win that's noteworthy, but this time the only real difference is that Conor ended his tweet by saying he was going to murder Justin and then go up to 170. Kind of nonchalantly dismissing or letting go of the mention of the Khabib rematch. It is what it is, so we'll just go on from there. I don't want to get too deep into that. What I do want to give a little mention to here is some very interesting results that we got announced yesterday. The medical suspensions from UFC 249. So there was some absolute vicious fucking knockouts in UFC 249, and there were some not very damaging matches that went to decision and could have probably went 2 more rounds, and both parties would have still ended up clean and pretty at the end of the fight. So it's a little bit interesting to see some of these results here. I just want to give you the quick breakdown, and then I will let you absorb and react a little bit. So Tony Ferguson, who has a smashed orbital, broken nose, and cracked jaw. Jairzinho Rozenstruik, who got absolutely melted by Francis Ngannou in 20 seconds and took over 3 minutes to be brought back to consciousness. And then Jeremy Stevens, who missed weight and then still got knocked out afterwards. All 3 receive a 60-day medical suspension. Henry Cejudo and Dominic Cruz, who were in a 4.5-round pretty fucking legitimate war, ending with a stoppage that we talked about on Dominic's part, both only received a 45-day suspension for medical. Then we get to the interesting part here. Both Ryan Spann and Smilin' Sam Alvey, who put on a 3-round war, Nico Price, Fabricio Verdum, and Alexei Olenek, Anthony Pettis, Jorgen De Castro, and Calvin Kattar, none of which got knocked out, all received 180-day medical suspensions. Two of those people were legitimately unconscious during that fight. Neither of them are on the 180-day suspension list. And no one on the 180-day suspension list got knocked out. The guy who took the most physical damage of the evening, Tony Ferguson, has a 60-day suspension right next to one of the men who got brutal and violently knocked out in 20 seconds, Jairzinho Rozenstruik. How the fuck is the Athletic Commission in Florida justifying these medical suspensions?
Well, this is the same thing we talk about all the time. In fact, I'm pretty sure we talked about this during 249 about how long there was going to be stupid amounts of suspensions.
Mm-hmm.
And we see this a lot when women are fighting. They might not have a bad scrap, but a lot of times you're seeing these women fucking 4-6 month suspensions, even though they weren't that fucking bad. It's the way that they choose to do medical suspensions boggles my mind. Like, I understand over the course of a fight, you take a bunch of hits. Okay, let's say somebody breaks a toe, whatever. Look, those types of things. What I really want to know is when we get to it, how long is Mr. Tibia going to be medically suspended for?
Right.
I know we're going to talk about that one, but
60 days.
Yeah, he'll get 60 days, probably max. And that was gnarly, but the way they do it doesn't make any sense because you would figure the guys that take the most amount of damage get the most suspension. And I'm perfectly all right with that because they need that time.
Absolutely.
CTE is real. We were talking about it earlier.
Yeah.
Yep.
Guess what? Those guys need it.
Yeah, Tony Ferguson could probably use 6 months on that, sitting on the sideline.
Same with Jairzinho. Jairzinho hadn't really taken much of a shot, period, in his UFC career, and then Francis Ngannou quite literally melted him in 20 seconds so efficiently, it took them over 3 minutes to bring him back to consciousness while Francis was very nervously watching.
Yeah.
That is not a 60-day sit on the sideline situation. Justifying it right next to Tony Ferguson, who literally had the entire half of his face broken, swollen, and bleeding. Those two dudes only need 60 days. But 5 people who didn't hardly come out with a scratch on them need 6 months on the sidelines? There's something wrong with that equation.
I mean, let's say, I don't know, broken hands, broken feet. I mean, medical suspensions a lot of times make 0 sense to, I think, any of us. So
Right.
I don't know how much of it. I don't know how much of a, because we don't know what they found post fight.
Right.
So I mean, and we never will because
Yeah, they
medical
don't ever
records are
say
private.
it. Yeah.
Yep, HIPAA is a wonderful thing for that, so they can do these crazy suspensions that won't make any sense. But
Yeah, and then
what
I
in the
mean,
worst?
are the fighters themselves protesting the 6 months? I mean, until a fighter comes out and says
This is
the
stupid.
6 months suspension is bullshit, then
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. I don't know what we can say about it, right?
Right.
Or,
Like somebody like they might be like, oh, thank God I got 6 months.
well, hasn't fighters tried to do that? But they were sending in bogus shit from their doctors or
Uh,
from bogus doctors.
one fighter was doing that, and I use the word fighter loosely when I reference him as well.
Yeah,
So
and I was saying that loosely, so it's happened
yeah,
before.
yeah,
It has.
But at the,
And I mean, the medical suspensions are for the good of the fighters.
yeah,
yeah,
absolutely.
and they are, but some of them absolutely make no fucking sense at
Yeah.
all. Like there's some fights where you've seen guys that barely get touched, like maybe fucking hit a total of a dozen times in 3 rounds,
Right.
and they end up on the 6 month suspension list.
There was two of them on that list right there, where guys literally did not have a single bruise, red mark, scratch, scrape, cut, anything on their face after a 3-round fight, and they're out for 6 months.
It's straight fucking crazy.
Yeah, like I said, we don't know. We don't know what's going. We don't know why they got the suspensions. We never
Right.
will, and unless the fighter comes out specifically and says something about it.
Right.
I don't know. I don't know what I would say about it. Like, we don't know. We don't
Yeah.
know what was going on with the fighter. There could be broken, like I said, broken hands, broken feet, all sorts of stuff that isn't visible on the surface.
Yeah.
And you can sure as shit break that. You can break the hell out of your hands beating the piss out of somebody's face for 25 minutes. So
Yeah, 4 ounce gloves or not, they're
Yeah,
gonna
exactly.
Shit.
So I think there's probably a lot of other factors. I'm playing the heel again. I'm on the side of the doctor.
I'll help you with the heel here. It could also have something to do with when those fighters go back and see the doctors, what they decide to say to the doctor.
Right.
Because
right.
a lot of it has to do what comes out of your mouth, not necessarily what they see. The main things they're looking for: head injuries, broken bones, things like that. But then when you
Internals,
start
yeah.
seeing other things, that's where they might go, okay, we need to tack this on and this on. So it could be partially a fighter thing, but it could also be just some crazy fucking rule set that they have in regards to what constitute how many days that they need.
Yeah. So, yeah, a lot we don't
Agreed.
know.
We'll have to wait and see how it works out. But moving along from there, that's the last of the 249 discussions that I've got scheduled here. Now I would like to take just a little bit of time here before we jump into our predictions and breakdowns for this upcoming weekend's UFC Fight Night 172 to give just a little bit of a recap for last night's UFC Fight Night 171. Again, for any of you who didn't realize, we did a live commentary stream, a Combat Compatriot is what we called it, where we broke down and literally commented live on the fights with no sound from the fight itself. I will say it was very fun on my end. The only real downside I will say to this is that in most of us not listening to the commentary at all, giving our own commentary, which was the premise, the entire intention, we did miss a couple of little details, specifically in the corners where we weren't listening. We were just waiting for the fights to come back on, and relevant information was conveyed from the fighter to their cornermen during some of those fights. Again, it was few and far between. For the most part, it went off without a hitch, and we absolutely had a fucking wonderful time doing it. Hopefully, we'll be doing that again in the future for some other fights. But just a quick little overall a TLDR, if you will, for last night's fights. There was an interesting set of circumstances. We knew ahead of time going in, Carl Robertson had missed weight. He's the only person on the card that missed weight, and unlike Stevens last week, who was weighing in at the next fucking weight class, Carl Robertson only missed weight by 1.5 pounds. The interesting thing about that is that he came in at 187.5 for 185 pounds, 1.5 pounds over the limit. His opponent, Marvin Vettori, weighed in at the limit at 186. So literally for 0.1 of an ounce, Vettori would have been over as well. But with him not, he talked a massive amount of shit immediately. Come to find out after the fact that pound and a half was more significant than we thought, that the weight cut that Carl Robertson had been going through was so detrimental that last minute they actually ended up hospitalizing him as a result of that weight cut. Last minute, pulling that entire fight from the card, which is what threw us off. Last minute, they pushed the entire show back an hour to compensate for that. So, fair warning, the beginning of the stream is just me hamming it the fuck up. You've been warned. But the shakeup that did start out UFC Fight Night 171 last night was originally set to be the premier prelim fight, moved up to the first fight due to the shakeup. Chase the Vanilla Gorilla Sherman versus Ike Villanova. Great fucking opening fight. I absolutely would have rather had it in that premier prelim fight, but I understand having it first. They set the fucking tone. Those big men came out and put a fucking fireworks show on. Chase Sherman, for a guy who has spent the last 2 years focusing on bare knuckle fighting, came back to the UFC and did not look like he had missed a fucking beat. He put the work down on Ike Villanova with a very well blended balance of constant combination punches and nicely mixed in low kicks that definitely did exactly what he wanted to and got him a very beautiful victory in the end.
His leg kicks were on point because that really slowed Villanova down.
250-pound dude throwing hard leg kicks at you will fucking heed your progress a little bit.
But you could tell how much his boxing has crisped up since the last time we saw him in the UFC. That bare knuckle has obviously helped his hands a lot.
Fuck yes, noticeably.
Not to mention, he threw some really nice elbows in that fight.
He really looked really good. He was very well-rounded. He was mixing shit up. He wasn't telegraphing anything. Everything was coming out real smooth, unpredictable. I was very pleased with it. I was very impressed.
Man, was he doing a great job slipping punches, too.
Fuck yeah. For a big dude, he was fucking giant Floyd Mayweathering some of them shots. So, from there, we got a little bit more of an interesting match. Hunter Azure versus Brian Kelleher. Basically, for a round and a half, Brian Kelleher got the absolute shit beat out of him by Hunter Azure. Hunter was slipping, Hunter was gripping, Hunter was ripping. He was out of there, he was in there, he was fucking tagging Brian Kelleher left and right. Seemed like he almost couldn't fucking miss. And then danger struck. Out of nowhere, when it literally looked like Brian Kelleher was starting to wear down and slow down and was noticeably losing some steam, he landed the luckiest left hook of the fucking night and just absolutely sat Hunter Azure down for the fucking count.
Yes, Brian Kelleher.
I think the biggest takeaway for me from that holy shit moment wasn't so much the fight and the moment where he landed that lucky left. It was in the post-fight press conference that I shared where he attributed that knockout punch directly to the fact that he is now wearing Tiger's Eye quartz crystals around his fucking neck. So apparently he and Jared Cannonier are having crystal parties after fucking fights now in the non-drug sense.
All joking aside about his crystals here, as much as I want to. To be honest, I thought that was a beautifully placed left hook because he slipped the punch and just fucking cracked him, and he hit the button. And normally, I don't think that would have ended it, but he literally slipped the punch just right and just hit the button right on the nose. It was a beautiful thing to see, but to come back out and say it was all in the crystals, get the fuck out of here, dude! And the earth is flat.
Yeah, you know.
There's always a crystal's chance.
That's right.
Every fight.
Every fight starts with a crystal.
That's going to be Kelleher's new moniker when we talk about him.
Always
Right.
a crystal's chance.
Crystal's
Always a
chance, not a
crystal's
bunch
chance.
of chance.
That's right. That's right. So the next fight after that, again, amazing fucking war that they came out with to give us a fucking hell of a show. Omar Morales versus Benitez. Holy fucking shit. Like, we had faith that Omar Morales was going to come out and do work, but both of these gentlemen came out looking fucking spectacular. spectacular. Omar Morales came out and was cool, calm, and collect the whole fucking fight. It almost looked like he took this more of a sparring match than an actual fight. He was very calm, very precise with his striking. Excuse me, everything was very technical. He didn't get wild, he didn't get crazy. And to his credit, Benitez was a fucking animal. Every time Morales came in, Benitez was right there back trying to counter with him. And at one point, I believe they said it happened in the beginning of the second round, Benitez threw a low kick. Or no, it wasn't the low kick, it was the body kick. He threw a body kick that Morales went to block with his arms, and the very middle of Morales' shin, or Benitez's shin rather, landed directly on the blade of Morales' elbow and opened it up. I exaggerate you not, the size of my thumb directly to his shin bone. Not only did this not slow Benitez down, he threw fucking kicks with that leg at full force for the entire rest of the fucking fight. Mad props to Morales, but unbelievable respect earned from Benitez. Oh, shit.
Yeah, that was a gnarly fight. Just beautifully done. Check that message I just sent you while we're talking here. But yeah, those guys absolutely went to war. And when you can see somebody's tibia through their leg or through their skin, that's a beautiful thing.
That's the nice thing about there not being all that many nerves down there. When I got hit by a truck on my bicycle and split my kneecap open down to the patella, I really didn't feel anything until the next day. So I'm assuming that's probably where he's at. He's probably feeling it today. He's probably limping. He's probably got at least four or five good stitches in there to close everything up. So
He had to have more than that because that went through the muscle tissue and all that. So he's got some underlying stitches there. I'm guaranteeing that dude's either in a wheelchair today or on crutches.
Yeah.
And yes, as of just a moment ago, OBS has once again shit out on us like it did in the early video and it did in yesterday's video. So we've got no video right now. I've tried to start it again. I'm going to crash OBS real quick and try and reload it real quick. If not, you guys are just going to deal with no video for the rest real quick. Hang tight. I will be right back with this. Okay, let's try that now. OBS should be coming back to the feed. Let's see. I think, oh, maybe? Let's see. Okay, so as you can probably tell by the new video on the screen, we are experiencing some OBS technical difficulties at the moment. We are still here. We are going to finish the show, but unfortunately, you will not get to see our gorgeous faces for the remainder of the program. But I did try to make sure you got an entertaining thing to deal with in the meanwhile. Okay, so, yeah, Morales is a badass. Benitez is a badass, but his shin is fucking busted. We will definitely have to see how long his medical suspension comes out, like we were talking about earlier.
You know, I'm wondering, because of scar tissue and how it has a tendency to break a lot easier, how that's going to affect him in future fights.
Well, the thing that I thought immediately of when I saw that was Luke Rockhold. That is exactly why Luke Rockhold stopped fighting for almost 2 years, because he had that exact same injury. And after 4 surgeries, they could not get his leg to stay closed. It would immediately split open upon contact and bleed like a stuck pig for, an hour. So I'm curious to see how Benitez is going to handle this going forward as well.
It'll be interesting to see. Both of the dude's a fucking warrior, though.
You said about a lot of the dudes from last night's show. Oh, so there was a ton of good fights.
Yeah, last night was just absolutely fantastic. Those guys put on a hell of a war. Every one of them. I was quite impressed with how the night went.
Yeah, I agree. There
There
was
was not a dull
there,
fight, in my own opinion.
there was a, yeah, I mean there was
Well,
There's
no, I take that back. There's one.
Yeah, I was gonna say there was one fight that was kind of garbage, but overall we kind of expected it to be, and that's actually the next fight that went down. What they made the quote unquote premier prelim fight turned out to be Sajira Eubanks versus Sarah Moras. Um, Sajira Eubanks, I said it before and I'm saying it again. Sajira Eubanks fucking sucks. That was Sarah Moras's fight to lose, and she did. She put the
yeah.
work in, but could not finish anything she started. And Sajira Eubanks didn't do anything worth bragging about or worth quoting for the win. I think it was more the fact that Sarah Moras could not do anything anytime she was given the opportunity. But that was absolutely the least entertaining fight on the card, and we kind of anticipated it was going to be.
it was better than I thought it was going to be. I was really surprised that Sarah Moras lost that fight. Like
Same.
it really was her. It really was her fight to lose. And there was at one point, like it was like, is she gonna lock her in a Google Plata? Like, interesting, go for it. And it looked like she had her, and she couldn't put her away with any of the submissions. So Eubanks might be tougher than I think, but I really don't think that. I think I overestimated Sarah Moras's BJJ game.
Well, what's funny is when I watched that, I saw the possibility of a go-go plata there, but I don't think she knew what a go-go plata was because it looked like she was trying to isolate an arm is what she was trying to do, which in turn you did see her go for an arm bar.
Yeah.
But she literally had her chin under her chin. All she had to do was reach over the back of her head, grab her big toe, and start pulling down and wrenching. And that would have been the end of it. But
it definitely would have.
She instead opted to go for something that she'd gotten before in a previous fight, but it just didn't work out this time. So
I mean, Eubanks, like I said last night, Eubanks has bigger arms than anybody here in the room.
Yeah, no shit.
Sarah Moras trying to break that grip. I don't know. I think we saw last night she's not capable of breaking that grip.
No, and not when Eubanks was in a basically a standing position because she was up on both feet when she.
Yeah.
And what's really fucked up is Sarah really screwed the pooch on that because she had the perfect bite. For those of you that are not familiar with what I'm talking about, the bite that I'm talking about is when the leg goes over the back of the head and the back of your knee is up against their neck to set in an arm bar. She had it, but then released it to adjust. If she would have kept that and used it to springboard Eubanks onto her back, she would have had that perfectly sunk, but she released the bite she had on her neck with her leg to adjust for some odd reason, and I don't know why. Like, it was literally a beautiful BJJ. It's literally what they teach you when you're doing an arm bar from the guard. Take the bite. Once you've got that perfect bite there, you don't release it. You hang on to that arm for dear life with one arm. And if you want, reach down with your free arm, grab an ankle, and flip them over. Put them on their back. But for some odd reason, unbeknownst to me, she let go of it, and then, well, you lose. That's all there was to it. Because that was her last-ditch effort there in those closing minutes.
Yeah.
Yep, I agree. It was a fight. I think that's about all we can accurately call it. It was a fight. On the other hand, opening up the main card was one hell of a surprising fucking fight. Michael Johnson looking the absolute best we have seen him in a long fucking time against Tiago Moises, a very underrated BJJ practitioner. This fight did not really go, again, how anyone thought it did, because this is one of those fights that we've seen quite a few of lately where round one starts out one way and then round two goes a whole fucking different direction. Round one, Michael Johnson came out and looked fucking crisp. His striking was nice, his movement was nice, his fucking footwork was off the charts compared to anything we'd seen from him in a long time. He absolutely, I would say 10-9, maybe even controversially 10-8 got that first round because he was putting work in and stopped everything that Tiago was trying to bring at him. And then the opening bell for round two happened, and the whole fucking kitchen got turned upside down, quite literally. Tiago Moises came out and went directly for a takedown, grabbed Johnson's waist, could not get him with the waist, so switched to a single leg, put him on his ass, wrapped him up, and got him out of there in absolute short order with a fucking vicious ankle lock in, I believe they said it was 17 seconds in round two. Again, props to Michael Johnson for noticeably making leaps and bounds of progress. But as we've seen in the past now multiple times, if you put him against even a mediocre wrestler grappler, he's in trouble. He's doing good when he's on his feet, and his striking has absolutely gotten more crisp than we had seen it previously. But he absolutely showed us last night that even though his striking is better than it's ever been, he clearly has not been putting the work he needs to in on his ground game. And Tiago just fucking had his way with him in less than 20 seconds in the beginning of round two. So props to Tiago and Johnson. If they don't cut you somehow, get in a fucking wrestling program tomorrow.
I have to give Michael Johnson credit. He averted a lot of takedowns in the first round.
Yes, he did.
And to be fair, in the second round, he did a great sprawl on the double leg that was initially thrown by Tiago.
Initially, he was doing
but then
good for
Tiago did what any good wrestler is trained to do, and that's chain takedown attempts. Yep. So he went from the double to this high crotch single and knew he couldn't get him down because Johnson had a good position. So it wasn't actually a takedown because he pulled guard on him to set that heel hook. Once that was done and he started to pull guard, Michael Johnson should have known what to do at that point to stop that, but he did not, and ended up subsequently getting tapped in under 30 seconds in the second. But he did a fabulous fucking job in the first round. To be honest, I just don't think he wasn't well prepared for the chain wrestling attempt that was coming his way. And he should have known the way he was working Tiago, that should have been his one key focus in that second round was stuffing takedowns and chain wrestling attempts. Because had he done that right from the get-go, he would have ended up winning that fight. But that's not how that played out. Instead, his knee got fucked up because it looked like initially, in my own opinion, Michael Johnson tapped pretty quick, but the ref missed it. And then he was forced to tap again at a later time. So I think his knee got a little more overly tweaked than it should have.
Michael Johnson looked very good in the first round. But then exactly what I thought was going to happen happened. Tiago Moises he's a very underrated BJJ guy. And he basically said, I'm done fucking around in that second round. Like, he got it. He was thwarted a couple times. He had to regroup, went back to his corner, and they probably told him, do what you do. And he went out and he did what he did. And he was done fucking around in that second round. You could tell right from the start. Like, this is the Michael Johnson beating on him, keeping him at a distance, sprawling on him, stopping the takedowns. Wasn't gonna happen in the second round. Not to a dude like Moises.
Yep. So
yeah, it kind of went the way I thought it was going to happen. I fully expected that to happen in the first round. Right. But Michael Johnson was better than I thought. So yeah, Moises had to go back to his corner and get regrouped and come out and just do his thing.
Right, and to TJ's point, Tiago actually said in one of the backstage post-fight unofficial interview things that when he initially put the ankle lock on Michael Johnson, he felt his leg pop immediately, which is why Michael Johnson reached down to tap. So he went to let go, but realized that the referee hadn't seen it. So he loosened his grip, but didn't let go. And in the process of waiting for the referee, Michael Johnson tried to roll again, and he said he felt Michael's leg pop 2 more times before the referee actually stopped him. He said he felt bad about it, but at the same time, he quoted that we've seen too many fights where someone lets go because of a tap and the referee doesn't see it, and then it doesn't count as a victory. So I understand, but still, ouch.
And the worst part of that is we had to watch Michael Johnson physically get helped from the octagon.
Yeah.
Because, and look, again, referee must have been in just the wrong position and missed the first tap. It happens. Look, we get that. We talked about this earlier. I'm not going to get too deep into that, but it is what it is. It wasn't a bad stoppage. I mean, he stopped it the second he saw the tap, which the right thing to do. You missed the first one, albeit it was a very short tap because, like, when I watched it, it was a very quick tap.
He kind of just touched down instead of, like, giving a discernible tap.
It kind of looked like the single, I'm going to use this to see if you're going to loosen up to let me out thing.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I saw his hand move more than once as he was reaching down. So it's kind of a double-edged sword there. I mean, it was a great fight overall and a wonderful finish by Thiago Moises.
Absolutely. Moving along from there, the next fight was kind of, again, how we thought the fight was going to go. The controversy here didn't come during the fight. It came during the decision that was rendered. Felipe Lenz, the former PFL heavyweight, against Andrei Arlovsky. To be fair, Arlovsky did not look terrible. He did not look good, but he did not look terrible. Felipe Lenz absolutely walked him down the entire fight, controlled the pace, controlled where the fight was taking place for 99% of the action. But for some reason, the judges gave the fight to Arlovsky, who, as you could see in the announcement of the decision, even he was surprised by the announcement that he had won that fight. I don't think that Arlovsky is ready to be taken out behind the shed and put down just quite yet, but I am absolutely reaffirmed in our assessment that he's standing on 18 staring at the flag. This might not have been his last putt, but he does not have many more left in the bag. He's just about done, no matter how you look at it. On the other hand, I think Felipe Lenz has a fucking bright future in the UFC with a little bit of polishing here and there to adjust for the level of talent he's facing here versus what he had in the PFL. I think that guy is going to be a very, very serious threat to that heavyweight division very, very quickly.
Yeah, I agree. Felipe Lenz looked really good. I think the one thing that the refs or the judges could have taken was the fact that he counterpunched the entire the entire fight. So even though he was walking Arlovsky down, he was not initiating anything. And so I think that might have been the one thing that hurt him. But I mean, every counterpunch was on point. He looked fantastic. He looked fantastic. I think he may just have to adjust his game a little bit. And like you've got someone who could make some waves in a couple of years, I think.
Hell yeah.
But yeah, he looked pretty good, and he didn't even use any of his jiu-jitsu.
No, he didn't. That was the nice part. It was basically a boxing match for the most part.
Yeah.
Felipe definitely needs to work on his ability to get in there and strike first instead of counter strike, because counter striking in the heavyweight division, not a good fucking idea. Period.
Yeah, no shit. You don't want to give those guys the first chance.
It's okay to don't get me wrong. I'm not saying it's not good to be able to counter strike. I'm saying it's not good to use that as your main game plan. Because eventually, if you get good enough, you have to face somebody like Francis Ngannou, who's not going to counter strike you. He's going to put you into fucking orbit.
Yeah, he's going to go first.
I mean,
Ngannou's like, "You going to let me punch first? I'll see you in 3 minutes."
Right.
And look, Andre did a good job, relatively, to engage first. He wasn't controlling the center of the octagon. He was getting blocked down the whole time. And to be honest, it both looked like they both kind of wanted to counterpunch. But Arlovsky was the only one who was willing to just say fuck it and go first.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
I think that's the only way that they gave that.
controversial
I
as
don't
it
know
may
how
be,
they gave that fight to him.
I think they have to give it to Arlovsky purely on the fact that he was the one who was engaging. Because it's not that Felipe wasn't punching, he just wasn't punching first.
Right. I agree. I think that's a lot of what it was, and we saw it kind of as the fight played on when they were showing the statistics for the significant striking, where we were watching Arlovsky throw one punch that didn't always land and getting countered with 2 and 3 that did, but they were giving the strikes or the counts for significant strikes to Arlovsky for landing first or for throwing first more than they were to Lenz for countering with 2 and 3 shot combos afterwards.
Yeah. And some gnarly combos.
Some fucking mean ones. Yeah, holy shit, did he rock Arlovsky's fucking head a couple times real hard.
Yeah. And that's what happens when you let it go to a decision and you don't engage first, though, too. You risk that liability of losing the fight, and when you leave it in the judge's hands, you can't complain about it.
Absolutely. And now going on from there, we cannot call this a fucking fight show without taking a moment to talk about the fucking absolute brilliant fucking battle that was Ray Borg versus the mulletless Ricky Simone. Abso-fucking-lutely.
Fight of the night.
Bravo. Undeniably. I agree completely. On my notes, fight of the night. Right there. Fight of the night. I thought that was fucking fight of the night in the moment and on watching the replay of the event. I stand by my decision. That was fight of the fucking night. Those gentlemen were not giving an inch to each other. That was a fucking battle. Started on the feet every time, rarely ended there, and there was no point during that fight that either man had a discernible advantage over the other. That whole fucking battle went back and forth. The only thing I will say is that Ricky Simone was dictating things. Ricky Simone was leading the dance of these two gentlemen, and somehow, some fucking how, one of the judges gave the fight 30-27 to Ray Borg, while both of the other accurate judges gave it 29-28 to Ricky Simone.
Yeah. And I mean, Ricky Simone won that fight.
Absolutely.
Period. He was dictating. He was getting takedowns. He was getting those slams that he loves. Get him up off his feet and slam him to the mat.
Carry him 10 feet, throw him.
Both guys love.
Yeah.
Both guys love. So, but yeah, he dictated the pace. He landed more. I mean, I don't think there was any question that Ricky Simone won that fight. I don't know how you would look at it any other way. But I give credit. That was fight of the night. That was one of the best fights we've had this year. Period.
Hell yes.
I mean that'll stand up to anything that you say. Anything that you say is a fight of the year. That right there will stand up, just because there was no give, there was no take from either of these guys. They were just leaving everything out there. It's fucking beautiful. It's one of the finest fights I've had the privilege of watching in quite some time.
Yeah, those guys definitely went to war. That last judge who scored it completely in favor of Ray Borg, I don't know what the fuck he was thinking. Look, I will say this. I could give the benefit of the doubt that you could have gave him a 29-28, and I would have been perfectly all right with that.
I would have been fine if you gave him a 29-28.
But to give him a 30-27, were you taking selfies on your phone with you in the empty fucking arena?
Right.
You stupid bastard. But then again, this is where we come into this whole fucking talking poorly of judges, because a lot of them I do not think are qualified to be doing this. They take a course, they get signed off, they get certified by the fucking committee that's in place there, and bam, there you are sitting there. Probably never thrown a punch in your life, probably never taken a martial arts class in your life, and you're giving Ray Borg a 30-27. And I'm not trying to take anything away from Ray Borg here at all. Right. He was an absolute warrior, as was Ricky Simone. But the fucking judging in that was incomprehensible for that guy. What the fuck? That was an amazing fight. Obviously, fight of the night. And it was, for two small guys, they went at it harder than we've seen in a long time in the bantamweight division. And
Oh yeah, they
you know
were.
what that tells me? Ricky Simone is going to be problems for somebody.
Fuck
Big fucking time.
Fuck yeah.
In fact, wait a minute. Um, that's the 135-pound division.
Yes, sir.
I know a guy who's going to be looking for a fight pretty soon with the first name of Peter. I mean, I'm just saying this is a good possibility of a matchup for that.
I agree.
Ricky
I
Simone,
agree completely.
That'd be
I would be 100%
really good
behind
fight.
that. Don't get me wrong. There's some other guys in the 135-pound division that deserve a shot at it, but the way Ricky Simone came out during this fight, put that kid up there.
See, I'm with you to a certain degree. I don't, and don't get me wrong, I fucking love Ricky Simone, and I'm a huge fucking proponent of his, but I don't think he's quite ready for that strap just quite yet. But on that same token, I think for him to be able to prove that he is and prove the level of talent he has right now, I think him versus Aljamain Sterling for a title contender eliminator would be a great fight, because Aljamain Sterling, even though he's been on the sidelines after surgery for almost 9 months now, has still been talking shit, falsely claiming that he's the real number one contender and that he's the one that should fight Peter Yan for the belt, even though no one else agrees with that. So I think if you want to run your fucking mouth, you want to insert yourself in that situation, cool. Put yourself against one of the quickest rising stars in your division, who is arguably on his way to the top. Prove you deserve to be at the top, and if you win, you can go fight Peter.
I mean, after that fight last night, I mean, he has to be in the conversation.
Fuck yes, he does, man. It was a spectacular match.
Yeah, and him nor Ray Borg, neither one of those two are slouches in that division.
Yeah, no, Ray Borg. I mean, he gave almost as much as he took. He didn't dictate the pace of the majority of the fight, and he could not get a takedown. He could not get his takedowns. Like he was getting taken down. So I mean, you go by the rules. I mean, everything points at Ricky Simone. I'm not sure what that judge was seeing.
I'm blind, I'm deaf, I want to be a ref. Is that how that works? Or in this
I mean,
case,
I'm a little bit of those things. Can I go be a ref? Well, I mean, all I got to do is go find a course.
Find your course and get your certification.
I'm good. UFC, come on.
Hell yeah.
I like
They'll never come to Washington.
Not anytime soon, no. Oh, but moving along from there, another one of what we anticipated to be a fucking spectacular fight abso-fucking-lutely delivered every bit and more of what we thought it was going to be. Alexander, quote-unquote, the Great versus Drew Dober. Look, I get that Alexander Hernandez came into the UFC with a ton of fucking hype behind him and got a hell of a head of steam behind him, but then he fucked up and started neglecting to realize the opponents in front of him, and he set himself up to just get fucking mollywopped by Cowboy, who turned him into a stanky leg gif. And ever since then, he has not been able to recover. For whatever reason, I don't know if Cowboy head kicked him too fucking hard or what the case may be, but Alex cannot seem to get it into his head that in order to brag like you are great, you have to actually be able to perform and show that you are indeed great. You can't just add that moniker to your fucking name and expect it to apply through osmosis or some shit. You gotta be great to call yourself great. And we saw a perfect example last night of Alexander having a name he did not fucking deserve. Drew Dober came out there and absolutely fucking handled him. Did not give him an inch to move on the fucking wrestling grounds. And then when it came to punch time, poor Alex's fucking face, because Drew was putting fucking work in on that young man. Dropped him and hurt that motherfucker, melted him against the fence so that they had to stop him before Hernandez actually hit the ground, because you could see it coming. He was wilting like a flower in the fucking sunlight. Props to Drew fucking Dober. That gentleman is about to make a gigantic splash in the lightweight division. Those 55-pounders better look the fuck out, because that man is climbing up that fucking ladder at breakneck pace.
Yeah, Drew Dober just beat the piss out of him, and I mean, I enjoyed it. I enjoyed watching the great Alexander, the great Hernandez get his ass. I mean, he that was just an ass whooping on every level.
Yeah.
Like there was, he could not do anything. When he came down to the cage, he looked like he didn't want to get in the cage with Drew Dober.
Yeah. I don't blame him.
The Doberman. The
Yeah.
Doberman. He didn't want to get in the cage with the Doberman. But you just see it on his face. Like he wasn't, I'm not sure what's going on with him, but he didn't want to get in that cage. He did not want to fight Drew Dober. He was doing it because he had to. And he hasn't looked right since he got head kicked to oblivion. So
No, he hasn't.
So I mean, it might be time for him to step back and be like, hey, you got to get that confidence back somehow. Somehow you can't just skid and think that you're still going to have a job.
Yeah, take some gym
Just
smokers or something. You got to get your up.
In these divisions that
Yeah.
are loaded divisions. You can't just keep taking ass whoopings. Eventually Dana will stop it for you.
Right.
By sending you on your way. And I mean, maybe that's what he needs. Get out, go fight somewhere else. But yeah, he got thumped. He got thumped last night. It was a joy to watch, just because how precise and how precise Drew Dober was on everything he did. That kid, he's gonna make some noise. He needs to get uglied up a little bit though. Someone needs to make his nose crooked or something. Drew Dober's way too pretty to keep going. Like, there's no way he can be a champion being as pretty as he is.
Look, I really only had two things to say on this fight. One, if you go back and watch last week's show, I'm pretty sure I said Drew Dober wins this second round finish. Two, that's only because I wanted to toot my own horn a little bit. But two, Drew Dober followed the exact blueprint layout that Donald Cerrone laid out on how to piece him apart and put on a striking clinic.
Fuck yes, he did.
He did indeed. So all of this in turn, this blueprint that is out here is going to continue to work. Why? Because this is what happens when you take somebody from the Contender Series, put them on a fast train, and try to send them to the top. They start to get to these guys that are really fucking good.
And guys that do their research.
And start getting demolished. Yep. So, you know what? I'm not going to say other than Alexander needs to drop his moniker, rethink that a little bit. Maybe we'll call him Alexander the Sleepy Hernandez, because all he's doing lately is getting slept. So I think it's time for him to move on from that moniker. And that's Drew Dober. That dude has he has firepower in his hands. And
fuck yeah.
And you know, the more I watch him, the more I say he's dangerous in the lightweight division. He's got a couple of things to cinch up in his game, but overall, striking on his feet, he'll hang with anybody right now.
Well, and one thing that I learned last night in doing a little bit of research after everything was all said and done and watching some of the post-fight interviews and stuff like that, I did not realize until last night, we knew Drew Dober had an immaculate wrestling background. You can kind of tell by his physique and his style. I was not aware until last night that Drew Dober has a decade of Muay Thai experience under his belt that he did before he started wrestling. So he is a true multifaceted, legitimate mixed martial artist. He has world-class wrestling, he has world-class Muay Thai, and he has absolutely undeniable striking prowess. That guy's got a great fucking formula put together to go up that ladder real quick at lightweight, man.
Yeah, I guess the only other thing I would add to that, I did watch an interview with him prior to the fight, and he's changed his mentality. He went back to the mentality he had in his late teens, mid-20s about fighting, to where he's back having fun with it again. Like, there was a lull in his career where he's like, do I really want to do this? And then he said, back into that same mentality of kind of the fuck it mentality that he had in his 20s. He's like, and it's working great. I'm happy when I'm ready to fight. I'm calm. He's like, this is the right mentality for me to have. And it has obviously paid dividends.
Hell yeah.
Do what works, man.
That's what I was going to say. If it's working, fucking go with it, buddy. Ain't nobody going to say shit to you about it.
Keep that lucky sock.
Yeah, no shit. Whatever it takes, man. You got it. Fucking roll with it. But from there, co-main and main event, try and run through these fairly quickly because I do want to give some quick little breakdowns about 172 before we get out of here. And it is getting a little bit late. The premiere, well, I guess not really premiere, the debut, I would say, of OSP at heavyweight against Ben Rothwell. Overall takeaway, OSP did not do terrible, but he did not look great. I don't know if it was because he wasn't planning to go to heavyweight and this was a last-minute fight that he accepted, if he was planning to go to heavyweight but just didn't have enough time to train and acclimate his body to the heavier status he was at, or what the case may be, but he did not look like himself. Now, on the other hand, Ben fucking Rothwell looked like an absolute goddamn stud last night. Beautiful striking, crisp fucking movement, head movement, and fucking Floyd Mayweather-esque punch dodging that was unfucking heard of by the Kenosha Killer before last night. That man looked spec-fucking-tacular. I will say, if OSP wants to come to heavyweight and stay there, he's got some work to do. Otherwise, I would absolutely recommend going back to 205, because what we saw last night is not going to fucking cut it at heavyweight.
I agree 100%. The only thing I'd like to add to that, shout out to my boy Ben Rothwell, holding it down for us Wisconsin boys last night.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's not a lot to say about that. I mean, I think it was a short notice fight, and OSP was just doing Dana a favor. And I mean, Ben Rothwell he looked like a tank.
Yeah.
Like OSP had no answer for what he was doing for the majority of the fight. So he took off running at one point and ran about 3/4 of the way around the ring.
Yeah, literally.
So yeah, that might be the second least enjoyable fight of the evening.
I can see that.
But I mean, I give all the credit to Ben Rothwell. I mean, he looked fantastic.
Hell yes. So then that will bring us inevitably to the main event, which I can tell you right now with 100% certainty, regardless of what happens Saturday night, we will still be talking about the main event from Wednesday night come Sunday when we get to the What Did I Say show recap, because there is so much to unpack that I don't want to do a disservice to this show by trying to cram it all in there, but I do want to make a point to talk about it real quickly. This was one of the most brutal endings to a fight we have seen since Ortega and Holloway. In rounds 1 and 2, Anthony Smith came out and looked like an absolute fucking world breaker. The problem was he was putting on double the pace that he's used to. He was being the aggressor. He was striking. They did the numbers. He literally was throwing more than twice the amount of punches he has ever thrown in any fight he has had up until last night. And the problem is when you do double the output, you get half the time for it. That's almost exactly what we saw. For rounds 1 and 2, Anthony Smith looked great. He was in and out. He was striking clean. He was striking crisp. But then when the third round hit, you just saw the slowdown hit. And when that slowdown hit, Glover put the fucking gas on and just absolutely fucking demolished him. He was countering him better. He was getting first shots better. He was moving better than Anthony was. In between the third and the fourth round, Anthony Smith had already been hit so much he literally told his corner, "My teeth are falling out." This is one of the things that we missed because we had it on mute. Then in the fourth round itself, at one point, he got hit and literally 2 of his teeth fell out of his fucking mouth. Anthony Smith picked them up off the canvas and handed them to Jason Herzog and went back to fighting. In the beginning of the 5th round, Anthony Smith got absolutely, unconscionably destroyed. He could not defend himself for almost half the rounds and was just walking in a punch-drunk daze trying to stay in the fight before they ultimately ended it. Anthony Smith is absolutely too strong for his own fucking good. Props to Glover Teixeira for the win, but Anthony Smith is too tough for his own fucking good. This was 100% Ortega Holloway-esque to me, in that a guy got beat so badly, but he would not let himself stop. In that situation, it is the job of one of 2 bodies to to stop that fucking fight if a fighter will not stop it on his own. It is the job of his corner, who is supposed to have his sole best interest at heart, or it is the job of the referee, whose sole job is to have both fighters' best interest at heart. And neither of those parties stopped this fight, and it cost Anthony Smith severe physical damage and a legitimate detriment to his career going forward.
Mm-hmm.
I'm actually, when I sat back and I thought about this after we watched the fight, my hat went off to Anthony Smith for being the warrior that he is,
Absolutely.
but also being too fucking stubborn to quit. He's too tough for his own goddamn good. And when you said when they ran the numbers on the first 2 rounds there, I think a lot of that had to do with what he had just gone through. I think there was a lot of motivation there, and he kind of blew his load because he's a little pissed off that somebody broke into his house, and that's his domain. I get that.
Agreed, yeah. Understandable.
On the other side of this, Glover Teixeira put on a fucking wonderful show, and my hat's off to him. I called this one again. I'm not going to toot my horn for this one, but I did say people were underestimating him, and I think across the board that was true to be the case. However, nothing against him here, but I'm so pissed that his fucking corner did not step in to save him. Look, I can't take anything from the ref on this one, because for the most part, up until like end of the 4th and right in the beginning of the 5th, where this all just completely went to shit, he was still intelligently defending himself.
Yes, he was. Absolutely.
And part of that rule set for the referee is if they're still intelligently defending themselves, you must let them fight.
Let them fight.
Look, we get it. We say this a lot. People shouldn't take more damage than need be. But if the guy's still fucking defending himself intelligently, he's got to let it go. I'm pretty sure anybody who was watching our live cast heard me say, please, just let him choke you.
At one point, I think everyone on the live cast said, stop the fight, ref. Everyone watching knew that fight had gone on too fucking long.
I love a good beatdown, but when we see stuff like that, look, as much as I love mixed martial arts, I love combat sports in general, I don't want to see that happen to anybody.
No.
Yeah.
Albeit it's too tough for his own good. When he's handing his own teeth to the referee to get him out of the fucking way, that's a tough cocksucker right there.
Yes, it is.
But he went on for 2 more rounds because that happened in the 3rd.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, something else happened in the 3rd. You saw him get his fucking orbital bone broken.
Yeah, get it crushed.
The second he took that shot, he stumbled back and put his hand up
and covered,
and covered it. From that point on, like this, like Glover just like it. This is all on his corner.
Yeah.
Even up to the very end, he was still trying to defend himself, and he was still intelligently defending himself. But he was dead to rights. Like there was nothing he could have done, and the ref stopped it at that point because he was dead to rights. Like Anthony Smith, okay, Cat.
Like I honestly feel bad for Anthony Smith because the ref has a job to do. The ref did his job correctly, in my opinion. Yeah. Albeit it could be thought of a little controversially, but I'm so pissed at his fucking corner.
Yeah, his corner should have thrown it at the very least heading into the 5th.
Well,
they should have thrown in the towel. They probably should have thrown in the towel in the 4th.
Yeah.
When
he told him my teeth are falling out, when he looked you straight in the face, no laughing, no exaggeration, and said my teeth are falling out, you should have fucking reevaluated immediately.
Yeah, you should have said, "Hey man, we can't let you do this." And now look at him. I mean, he's got skull fractures, he's got orbital fractures, his jaw's fractured. Like Anthony Smith is not going to be the same dude after this fight.
He's absolutely not.
It didn't have to go as far as it did.
No.
Like I think even after the when he got taken down in the 3rd, and I jokingly said, "All right, I only have to ride this out for another 3.5 minutes."
And
Like,
then
he proceeded to get his
did.
face punched into the mat
Yeah.
for another 3.5 minutes. Like, Glover was just doing what he's a professional fighter. This is what he does.
Yep.
The ref was obeying the rules.
Well, and
His
at one
corner.
point after the fight, when they went back and rolled like the little quips and things that kind of get lost in the live broadcast, I think it's actually on the UFC's Instagram page right now. They had a cameraman right in front of them for that 3.5 minutes that Anthony wrote it out on the ground with Glover pounding him. At one point, Glover literally reels back for a punch, stops and says, "I'm sorry, Anthony, this is just business." And Anthony says, "I understand, do what you got to do." And then Glover keeps fucking hitting him.
Yeah. And there was one point in the fourth when he had him down again, where Glover's getting ready to reel back, and he's like, quit. And Anthony Smith looks right at him and goes, "No."
Nope.
Yep, I saw that one.
And I was like, dude, you are so fucking tough, and you're like, we get it, Anthony Smith. You're fucking tough. And you were doing what you had to do. You were being a professional fighter. Your fucking corner needs to go. Your corner needs to go, because that is who was to blame for the extent of the injuries that Anthony Smith took last night.
Right.
Even if they didn't reevaluate when he said my teeth are coming out, they should have reevaluated when the doctor came in and looked at his fucking eye.
Yeah.
Right.
Because when they pulled the doctor in to have that looked at in between rounds, that should have put a light bulb off in their head that said, you know what, something's really fucking wrong if they're calling the doctor.
Yeah, if everyone else sees enough of a problem to call a doctor, but his corner doesn't, there's an issue.
Yeah, your corner is there to protect you when you're too fucking stubborn to protect yourself or to give up yourself. We know he's not going to give up. He's not that kind of person.
Right.
Yeah. And we've seen it a lot more recently. We've seen corners throwing in towels a lot more recently.
Reasonably too, yeah.
And I'm happy when they do that.
Me too.
Even if I'm not happy at the time, when I go back and I look at it and you go, you know what? They do the right thing. You're saving that guy's career, his livelihood.
Yep.
At this point, after this, do we see Anthony Smith again?
Well, think about it. Think of it this way.
I don't know that we see him again.
Look at it this way as a great example of this exact thing that we're talking about, of the corner looking out like they're supposed to. For reference sake, think of what would happen. Think of what would have happened in the Deontay Wilder Tyson Fury rematch. His corner threw in that towel for a reason. He was getting the absolute shit beat out of him, just like Anthony was. What would have happened if they wouldn't have stopped that fight and they would have let Deontay take 3 more rounds of that kind of ass whooping? We would have had a fucking Anthony Smith situation on our hands.
Yeah.
It's aggravating.
Live to fight another day.
Yeah.
As a corner man, look, I get it. You want to push your fighter to be their best, to continue.
And the fighter's telling you, I'm going to keep fighting. But if the dude's telling you, my teeth are fucking coming out.
Right. At that point, it's your job to save him from himself. Exactly.
Look, I can look past the teeth coming out thing. Hockey players do it all the time. So that part I have to look past. But knowing that you're watching your guy just fucking get demolished, it's not like he caught a puck to the face or anything where, okay, this is continually, the amount of uppercuts that he caught from Glover are fucking ridiculous. The knees in the clinch work that Glover was throwing.
And just those, I mean, like, he could not see those shots coming to his eye. Like, he was trying to defend himself, but Glover, all he had to, like, he would just readjust and just pop him again. Yeah. Right in that broken orbital. And fuck, right? I'm not sure how much more we can say about this fight. Like, it's gonna be controversial, like any sort of this fight, any sort of fight that comes down to this. So.
I agree. Well, on that spirit, take one last moment here. One last thing I want to talk about for 171, and then we'll give a quick little breakdown of 172, and we'll let you find folks out of here. Total at the end of the night, sum of the event, I guess, would be a good way to put it. Performance of the night bonus went to Glover Teixeira and Drew Dober, understandably in both situations.
Absolutely. Both of them deserved it.
My only issue with the bonuses for last night, for some fucking reason, Dana White gave fight of the night to Brian Kelleher versus Hunter Azure.
What?
I don't, in any universe, understand how that beat the Drew Dober fight. I don't understand how that beat the Borg Simone fight. I don't understand how
There's no way it beat the Borg
anything
Simone fight.
on the heavy or on the main card rather.
Yeah.
I thought the Drew Dober Alexander fight was better than that.
That's any fight on the main card I think would have been a better pick for fight of the night, but fucking Dana. So, moving on from there to try and give a fairly quick rundown here. Obviously, we've got another fight coming up on Saturday, UFC Fight Night 172. Unfortunately, this is the point getting back into the swing of things with combat sports where we start to lose a lot of the value in the fights that we're getting. Oh, hang on just a moment, because now my fucking headset's dying. Hell of a night we're having here. Hell of a night. Give me just a moment here. We'll switch this. There we go. Got to change OBS sound real quick. Okay, I think, maybe. When do you guys talk?
Hello, hello.
All right, we do. We got it back. Okay. Had to switch over to the backup set of headphones real quick. Obviously, we have UFC 172, Fight Night 172, coming up Saturday. So I do want to give kind of a quick little breakdown. But like I said, this is the point in getting back into the swing of things where we start to get the fluff thrown back at us. The filler, if you will, kind of gets mushed back in, because even though we did lose a couple events and we did have a bunch of fights to make up for, we have now at this point either seen those fights or have found out that those fights will be rebooked again later on down the year. So we're catching up, and they've got some filler to put in. We got a lot of it coming up Saturday. So we're not going to give you a full card breakdown. There's no fucking reason for that. Where I want to start here is on the prelims. There is an interesting matchup that I don't feel needs a full breakdown, but definitely deserves a mention so folks are aware, because this card isn't getting promotion, that this fight is going to take place. Talking about Nate Landwehr versus Darren the Damage Elkins. We have seen Darren Elkins on a bit of a hit and miss streak lately, so it feels like they are throwing him a bone here, because they are quite literally giving him an 0-1 soup can to fight on Saturday night. For all intents and purposes, this is Damage fight to lose. So I'm hoping he's going to take it here. He's had enough time. He's good enough. He's got an opponent who is lackluster enough, I think would be a good phrasing. I'm hoping that we see Elkins get his hand raised.
Yeah. I honestly don't care at this point for Elkins, because you know what? He hasn't shown me anything that's worthwhile, so fuck him.
That's why I'm saying... That's why I'm saying I think they're throwing him a bone here, because they're giving him literally an 0-1 soup can, and he is another one that had a lot of potential and has pretty much squandered it. So we'll see. Moving along from there, the next fight I want to talk about real quick, right up Fresh's alley. The little guy is going fucking crazy.
This fight's going to be fucking amazing.
Mike Davis versus Giga Chikadze, one of the coolest fucking names in the UFC right now. These dudes are both incredibly energetic little fucking powerhouses, and I think it's going to be a great fucking fight. The only thing I really feel is more discernible at this point is that Mike Davis is a little bit more of a small striker versus Giga Chikadze is more of a small, well-rounded fighter. He's got grappling, he's got striking, he's got a couple of submission attempts in his back pocket. I think both of these guys being fairly new to the UFC and starting to make their way through, I feel like they've both got a legitimate chance to come out of this with their hand raised, but I just feel like combined with the more well-roundedness and the awesome fucking name, I have to throw my hat in Giga Chikadze's corner.
Giga Chikadze.
The one thing I'm worried about for this fight, Mike Davis. He formerly fought at 155 as a lightweight. So dropping down to featherweight, that's a big 10 pounds when you're talking from 55 to 45. That's a lot of weight. I'm wondering how he's going to manage that weight cut,
especially against the guy who's energetic.
Is he still going to be having that power?
Yeah.
That's what you always got to watch. That's what you always have to wonder about in this sort of situation. But yeah, this is going to be a ton of fun. I mean, I don't think maybe I'd worry about the gas tank a little bit. but generally when these dudes go, they just go. And I'm not worried about gas tanks on either of these guys.
Yeah.
Higa Chikadze is a little bit more well rounded. So I mean he'll be a little bit better prepared for the situation, but it doesn't matter. These two are gonna go from the opening bell. There'll be probably about a minute of a feeling out process, and then after
Yeah.
that, it's gonna be balls to the wall. I don't want to pick a winner just because I want to sit back and enjoy the fuck out of this fight.
I completely understand that. So, moving along from there, will bring us to the premier prelim fight, as it were. Probably one of the most disappointing matchups we have seen on any of these three cards since the UFC has come back. Matt the Immortal Brown versus Miguel Baeza. Miguel Baeza is another one of those up-and-comers, 7-0, hasn't really had to face any kind of quote-unquote legitimate competition until this point. And then on the other side of that, you've got Matt Brown, who is on his way out. He's another one that he's putting on 18. He might not be on his last swing, but there aren't many more left in the fucking bag at this point. You can never really count out Matt Brown just because of what he's done and how much he's been through, but at the same time, it's really fucking hard for me to root for him at this point in his fucking career. I think Baeza gets it done, but I don't think it's easy. I think this one either goes to the judges or ends late in the third.
We've seen it over the last couple cards, prior to the Backstreet Boys ending our fun for a while. This sort of fight, and the more experienced fighter, I mean, generally has come out on top of these young up and comer guys. So I'm not sure if this will be any different, but I mean, Matt Brown certainly got the experience to know pretty much any situation that this young dude can put him in,
Right.
unless he gets super popped and just it's game over. But yeah, I mean, don't count him out. Don't count those crappy old bastards out.
I have to give the nod to fucking the Immortal on this one. Look, he looked fabulous in his last fight when he fought Ben Saunders. However, Ben Saunders was obviously on his last leg as well, but
Right.
elbows still fucking dangerous, stupidly dangerous.
Very true.
I have to give him a nod on this because I think he's going to have just enough in the tank after that last win to put the new guy on the ropes and put him away.
Interesting. I'm very curious to see how that plays out either way it goes. But that will bring us into the meat and potatoes, as it were, of this particular meat and potato segment, the main card itself, opening with one of my personal most exciting fights that I have looked forward to since they even hinted that this was going to be a fucking possibility. Song Yadong versus Marlon Chito Vera. This is going to be two little dudes who are going to go ape shit. Both of these guys have incredibly well-rounded toolboxes. They are both incredibly technically proficient, and they both have the gas tank to go full fucking force from the starting bell till the end of the fight, whenever that may be. This is one of the only fights I have seen since the Backstreet Boys got everything halted and we have come back that I legitimately don't have any fucking clue. I don't have the slightest who has any edge on either side here. Every way I look at it, these guys are almost, to quote Mike Goldberg, virtually identical.
Yeah.
I'm just excited for this fight. I'm not even going to try and pick a winner. I'm just excited to see this one fucking play out.
This is my favorite for fight of the night. I mean, Song Yadong, the Kung Fu Monkey.
Fuck yes.
Come on, like, it's such a great fucking name. Marlon Chico Vieira. Both of these guys should be on 5-win streaks. Marlon is on a 5-win streak, and Song Yadong should be on a 5-win.
Should have been, yeah.
The no contest that he was awarded was a crock of shit.
Yes.
But yeah, they're both capable of finishing. They're both incredibly equal, and we know what this weight class generally brings, and that's just gas pedal to the floor. Like I said, they'll be once again about a minute that they feel each other out, and
If
then
that, yeah.
They're just gonna go and go and go until this ends one way or the other. I think Marlon's a better finisher than
I
Song
agree.
Yadong is. So I fully expect Marlon. I fully expect full Cheeto fingers. He'll be advancing more in this fight. But I mean, you can't count out Song Yadong at any point. So I'm really looking forward to this fight.
This one has fireworks written all over it.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
Cheetah always comes. He's always coming every fucking time. And look, there's something to be said. These new fighters that are coming out of China,
There's so
they're putting in some fucking major players into the UFC, and they're fantastic. I have to do it. I have to go against Cheeto.
what?
I understand.
These
I get it. I
Chinese
get it.
fighters have been on a fantastic tear lately, and I think this is going to be no different. I don't think he's going to win it by a landslide,
Right.
but man, I have this feeling Cheeto's in for a rough night. As is Song Yadong, he's going to end up with his bumps and bruises as well. They're both going to know that they were in a fight by the time this is over.
Fuck
But
yes,
I
they
think
will.
he's going to get the nod, and I think it's going to go in the route of a decision. I'm looking more along the lines of possibly a split, even, but I think he's going to edge him out.
I could see that as well. I could
I
absolutely
would
see
love for
that.
this to go to decision.
Yeah, because that
Just
means we're
because
gonna
I know
get
it's
15
gonna be
minutes of ass whipping action.
fucking fantastic.
Fuck yes. So moving along from there to the next one on the card here, another kind of a strange matchup, but interesting to see how it's going to shake loose here. Eric ya boy Anders versus Christoph Jotko. This I cannot say has got me the most excited for the fucking card. I will say that it kind of gives me that Kevin Lee in a larger weight class feeling. Eric Anders really does remind me of like if Kevin Lee stopped dieting. That same mentality, same style, same potential with lackluster performance to come from it versus Christoph Jocko, who is just a European fucking dynamo of weird proportions. And I don't think that Anders has anything for him at this point. I think Anders is another one of those that came into the UFC with all the fucking hype in the world and the momentum behind him, and he just dropped the fucking ball and let that whole bundle of steam he had built up released into the fucking wild. And I think at this point, he's just going to give lackluster performances until we see him over fucking Bellator way.
Yeah. Christoph Jocko for me all day on this. He went on a little bit of a skid, but then he popped right back. And he's been rip roaring. There's always a puncher's chance for your boy, Eric Anders. But yeah, Christoph Jocko is going to be. I fully expect Christoph Jocko to kind of show Anders that he's in a little bit of a different class than he is.
Yeah.
So that's about all I got on that one.
I'm 100% in cahoots with you guys on this one. Giving it to the Polak, he's gonna get it done. Your boy is about to get your boy's ass out of the arena.
Absolutely. So now, with no further ado, that will bring us to the People's Co-Main event, as it were, the third from the end of the card fight. In this particular event, it's kind of a mixed bag here. It's going to be an interesting matchup when it's all said and done, but going into this fight, it's hard to get excited about. The fight I'm talking about here is Dan Ige versus Edson Barbosa. This is a bit of a mixed bag here because Ige has spent his last, I would say, 3 months or so, basically the majority of the beginning of 2020, talking shit about everyone except the guy that he has signed the contract and is going to step into the octagon with. Dan Ige has been busy calling out everyone under the sun while he has a fight scheduled against one of the most dangerous men in the UFC. The problem for me is that one of the most dangerous men in the UFC, being Edson Barbosa, he is also one of those gentlemen that, as much as we love him, is starting to show some fucking road miles, and he has got plenty. I don't agree 100% that he is on 18 putting at the flag like some of the other fighters we have mentioned here, but he is absolutely and undeniably on the back nine and within eyesight of the clubhouse. That being said, I don't think Ige has what it takes to get past him. I think a combination of overlooking someone as dangerous as Edson Barboza, combined with just not being on his level to begin with, is going to end up with a bad night for Dan Ige at the end of Saturday.
I'm right there with you. The only thing I would add to that, other than the fact that Ige is overlooking a fighter, which we always say is a terrible fucking idea.
Yep.
But Edson Barboza, I'm still sure, is still pretty pissed off about his last fight.
Yeah, no shit.
He lost to Paul Felder, and he was angry about it. So at this point, he's got something to prove. I have this strange feeling that we're going to see a head kick knockout. And it's going to be fucking glorious.
I was thinking that earlier, is that going through his highlight reel, watching the last couple of his fights for the most part, it has been a minute since we've seen that iconic and undeniably infamous Edson Barboza wheel kick. And I kind of feel like this might be where he tries to bring that back as well.
My one thing is Dan Ige has a tendency to let things go to the judges. Edson Barboza does not.
Not if he can help it, yeah.
Not if he can help it. I think this has the potential to be a very fun fight. I think the reality of it, Edson Barboza is one of the best just straight up fight performers that the UFC has, and his fights are excellent. And he's fighting a guy who likes to let things go to decision for whatever reason. He's not all that strong of a finisher, and yeah, I got to give it to Edson Barboza. I think I would say Edson will catch him with something in the second. I'm gonna go bold. I'm gonna go bold on this prediction. I think he's getting caught. I think Ige's getting caught in the second.
Nice.
I like it. I like it a lot.
I'll be all right with that. So, moving along from there, that will bring us into the cold and somewhat lumpy side dish that is the potatoes segment of this particular meat and potatoes segment.
Not quite done. That's the side.
Yeah, like the butter isn't melted all the way on the top. Like the chives are still attached to the stem and shit. Like
did you guys even microwave this? Like did you even bother trying?
So, if you didn't know by now, our co-main event for Saturday's UFC Fight Night 172 is a fight that no one really wanted to see or has any justification for, in Claudia Gadelha versus Angie Hill. Now, the one thing that I will say about this fight, regardless of the outcome of them, this fight puts Angela Hill in the unobtainable lead right now for most fights within a 1 year period. This puts her at 6 fights in a 365-day period, second only to Cowboy Cerrone with 5. I will say that's not an easy thing to do. No matter how your fights have turned out, going in the cage for almost a full 15 for, I believe, all of them, with the exception of one that ended in the late third, so almost full 15-round fights all the way across, that is an accomplishment, and even though I don't care for her as a fighter or a person, I will tip my hat to that accomplishment. That is a noteworthy achievement. That being said, she has been a lackluster, mediocre at best fighter her entire fucking career. Now she's stepping in against a woman in Claudia Gadelha who has now fought for the title multiple times and never touched it. But lately, she has changed camps to try and reinvigorate and reinvent her style, her career, her techniques, to bring her overall status as a fighter to a different point that she obviously needed. The problem with that is that we've already seen her one fight out from that camp, and she didn't change a fucking thing. So this comes down to a girl who isn't that good versus a girl who is that good but can't put it together. I have to, as much as it pains me to say, think that Claudia Gadelha is going to be less boring than Angela Hill here. I don't feel that she's going to outperform her. I don't think that this is going to be an exciting or a big firework type of fight. I think this is going to be a very disappointing co-main event, but I think at the end of the night, Claudia is still going to somehow come away with the win.
I mean, this is Claudia Gadelha's fight to lose. Like, she's a decent striker. Angela Hill's definitely a better striker, but she's got way more jiu-jitsu.
Yep.
Way more jiu-jitsu. If she can take advantage of it. I think I said almost the exact same thing the last time we were talking about Claudia Gadelha.
Yep.
Is if she can take advantage of her fucking jiu-jitsu, she can take this fight. Angela Hill has got to be feeling it at this point.
Yeah.
Like, taking this many fights, this many camps. I get it. She loves the fight. She's not all that great of a person. She's not all that fun of a fighter to watch. But she'll just take any fight. She doesn't give a shit. And I respect that.
Yep.
I respect the hell out of that. But this is Claudia Gadelha's fight to lose. Like, if you can get her on the ground, you're going to win this fight.
Yeah.
That's
pretty
all
much.
you have to do.
Pretty much, yeah.
That's all you have to do is get her on the ground. And I'm going to give her the benefit of the doubt again and say she's going to get her on the ground and she's going to make her tap. And I think I think that's just wash, rinse, and repeat of what I said the last time I was talking about it.
I think the only thing that pisses me off on the entirety of this fight, what the fuck is Angela Hill doing even in the realm of Claudia Gadelha? Claudia Gadelha is not a superstar in that division. However, they are miles apart. And maybe it's because she's fought so many times. They're like, here, let's throw you a bone and see what you can do about somebody who is actually better than you, rather than the trash we've been feeding you.
Right.
To keep your hype train up, because we like your nickname of Overkill, which you're clearly not. The only overkill you are is overkilling your ratings, because they are way over what they should be. That hype train needs to be fucking derailed in a bad way. And to be honest, I'm hoping, because I do like Claudia Gadelha. For some odd reason, there's a soft spot there for her, albeit she has not been able to change. There's a soft spot there for her, where I'm hoping she comes out and just completely demolishes Angela Hill in a just an ugly way, just to show how bad she truly is. Remove her from this pool, because she shouldn't be here anymore. There's a certain point where we just got to say, you know what? You belong down at the bottom as the gatekeeper for the up-and-comers.
Right.
And that's perfectly fine. Somebody's got to do it. Put your ass down there and keep you on an early prelim card where we can only get you if we turn on the TV at 4 in the afternoon.
Right. Where you're not exposed or forced into everyone's field of view. I agree with that.
I'm sick of having her shoved down my throat, pretty much. Look, if I'm not dressed to be raped. I don't like this. I'm telling you no. No means no. Stop doing it. Stop trying to feed me Ambiens into my drink, praying to God I'll pass out so you can take me from behind, UFC. I don't like it.
I agree. So, from there, that will bring us into the beautifully trimmed 16-ounce porterhouse that is our main event. The meat of the meat and potatoes in the meat and potatoes portion, in the meat and potatoes segment of the show. The beautiful co-main event we have to an ugly card that is the rebooking of Alistair the Ream Overeem versus Walt the Big Ticket Harris. Mm-hmm. Now, I could literally do an entire episode just on this fight alone, but I will try and keep it brief. We are looking at a man in Alistair Overeem who, despite being absolutely fucking demolished by top-tier talent multiple times, has refused to concede an inch of ground. He has not lost a step. He has not slowed down. He is still the Reem we have seen for years now, and it baffles my fucking mind. Now, the problem is, across from him, we have one of the most dangerous up-and-comers in the UFC who has now been given the literal strongest motivation a human being possibly could have to commit an act of violence, and they are going to pay him to do so. Walt Harris unfortunately lost his daughter, and that is a pain that no one should have to deal with. But furthermore than that, he has lost his daughter and gone immediately back to the gym to use fighting as his outlet of therapy. I completely understand and I commend that to the highest degree. I have the utmost respect and emphasis on feelings for Walt Harris in this situation. On the other hand, I have to take my hat off to Alistair Overeem for knowing he is stepping in a fight that he is most likely going to get seriously fucking hurt in. Walt Harris was no slouch to begin with, and then you gave him possibly the greatest motivator you can give a human being, and he's going to take that and bring it back to the octagon. I love the Reem, and I so genuinely want to see him continue to do well, but I cannot fathom a world where Walt Harris does not absolutely beat the dog shit out of him in under 3 rounds Saturday night.
Yeah, I'm inclined to agree with everything you said. Overeem's crafty as fuck though, and the one thing I worry about is the Anthony Smith situation.
Right.
Does Big Walt come out and just unleash hell? And if we've seen Overeem take pretty much he took a shotgun blast to the fucking face and still walked out of it. I mean, he's been knocked out, but we've seen him take some pretty crazy punishment. And that's the one thing I worry about is if this goes past the third, or if this gets up to the end of the second, beginning of the third, Overeem might very well take this if he can withstand what that initial blast is going to be. If it goes under 2 rounds, this is Walt Harris' fight. Walt Harris can knock him right out. So I don't have a whole lot to say about this situation. Like it's incredibly sad what happened, and it's amazing that he used the motivation. He looks like he's in about the best shape that he's ever been in. So yeah, if this goes past 2 though, like I got to start leaning towards Alistair Overeem. Actually sneaking one out because I think he could burn him out. But
Yep.
that's that's my thought.
I'm inclined to agree with all of that. I'm more worried about it does go kind of into the same Anthony Smith-esque thing. However, this is a wee bit different.
It is.
Is this going to be a case of are his emotions going to get the best of him before he even gets in there? Or is he going to have them laser focused at this point?
Right.
He appears to be laser focused.
He really does, yeah.
When he gets in there, does that laser focus go away and he just want to release the hounds? Or is it something that he manages to keep in sight and manage to push out if it has to go beyond 3?
Yeah.
To be honest, both the situation with Anthony Smith and what happened in his home and being invaded and what's happened to Walt Harris, both devastatingly terrible. As a father, as a family, the whole 9 yards. However, I'm not writing Anthony Smith's situation off here by any means, but what Walt Harris has gone through to know that his daughter was murdered, this is a whole different kind of angry parent that you're looking at. This is not the same, I had to beat up a crackhead in my house till the police got there type situation. This is I can't put my hands on the person that did this to my daughter, so I have to put my hands on somebody else. Yeah. I'm going to get paid to do it.
Okay. What Meter said, I give Alistair Overeem for credit saying I volunteer as tribute.
Yeah, and he knew. He said it. He knew going in, accepting that fight, that there's a possibility that he's going to be on the receiving end of all that pent-up aggression. And he understands the risk, and he signed the contract anyway. So my hat's the fuck off to him for that.
And my hat's off to him too. But I can't write Alistair Overeem off though either. That dude is a crafty veteran. He's been around this sport for a long time. However, there's nothing like the wrath of a devastated parent. I can guarantee you that. That's there's something to be said there that I don't think he can go 100% full bore, fucking 5 rounds guaranteed, because he's gonna be living off of that right now. I really think his body might start to fail, but he will push through it. I don't think Alistair stands a chance here. As much as I don't want to write Alistair off, I think that whole heavyweight division, until Walt Harris has gotten it all out of his system, which I don't think is ever going to happen.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. I don't know that that's ever going to be completely out. I think that might be his future motivation.
Better be watching this fight and knowing what they've all signed up for, to include Francis Ngannou.
Fuck yeah. Fuck yes.
Look, there's no one safe from that man's wrath. Depending what we see out of him, that's going to tell you everything you need to know moving forward about Walt Harris and what's going to happen to other fighters in the division. I have this strange inkling that we're going to see one of the scariest heavyweight fighters the UFC has ever seen on Saturday. And Alistair, dude, I don't know why you keep putting yourself in these situations, but man, I love you for it. But at the same time, please get your head checked. Go do that.
I'm worried about you, brother.
Yeah, no shit. No shit.
But yeah, I do. I have to give the nod to Walt here. I can't, in good faith, give it to Alistair as much as I would like to. I think that parent's rage right now, is going to be the deciding factor in this fight. And understandably, Alistair doesn't have that problem right now. So, the only problem he has right now is his lip going to explode, his liver? What's going to happen here?
Yeah, I agree. But either way, it's going to be a hell of a fucking way to end Saturday night and put us officially back on track with the UFC going forward as of not this coming Saturday, which will be the 172 card, but the following Saturday, which will be the 173 / ESPN or UFC on ESPN 8 / UFC Vegas again. They are going back to the Apex, and we will officially be back onto what was set forth originally as the UFC's 2020 schedule going forward. Obviously, they still have a couple fights to try and slide back in from the Backstreet Boys reunion, but with this fight, with this card, that puts us back on the rails to get back to, at least timing-wise, a normal sense of combat sports that we were accustomed to before all this shit came into our lives.
I almost forgot one thing that we missed in the news segment, unless I missed it while I was away for a moment.
What was that?
The UFC event that was scheduled for the 23rd of May has now been moved to the 30th. So there will be no fights on the 23rd. They have been moved to the 30th.
What did they do with the event from the 30th? Because there was originally one on both days.
That I don't know. I know the event from the 23rd has been moved, though.
Okay, so that I will look into between now and next week's episode. I will bring you guys an update on that next week because I wasn't aware of that as well.
Dana White said something about that with the whole move to Vegas. So it'll be on the 30th, not on the 23rd.
Okay, so either way, I will look into that, and I will make sure we get to the bottom of that before next week's episode. But with that being said, folks, that is all we have for this particular episode here. So before we get out of here, I want to take just a moment here and give these fine gentlemen a chance to thank them and give you a chance to find out where you can catch some more. So at this point, we know somewhere near the South Bend, Oregon, West Lynn, Oregon area, or excuse me, South Bend, Oregon, West Lynn, Washington area, somewhere in between those two is where we are starting the search. But if folks are ready to sign up for the Find Chaels Submission Silo scavenger hunt, how can they get a hold of you from here on out, Fresh03?
YouTube.com/Fresh03. We will probably start broadcasting as we're closing in. We'll do some live broadcasts from grain fields. that area tends to be heavy on grain. So we are closing in. And eventually we will find America's hero, Chael Sonnen, and give him a hug. But as of right now, we're just kicking silo doors and hoping for the best.
Awesome. So, by now, I'm sure they're well acquainted, but if somehow they aren't, and they need to know where to get the best cheese curds and Ben Rothwell memorabilia in the Green Bay area, how can folks find you after this, Galti?
Find me Wednesday nights here on the YouTubes, 9:30 Central Time. Every Wednesday, I'm here. Find me on the Instagrams, or if you're my neighbor down the street, you can come and knock on my door.
Thanks, Mike. So that is all we've got for this particular episode, folks. Remember, if you enjoyed what we did here, give us a thumbs up. If we made you giggle, maybe subscribe. If we really tickled your fancy, brought some points of view to you that you didn't have before, consider sharing an episode of the show. We're trying to grow this damn thing. On the opposite side of that coin, if we just seem like a couple of dumbasses who can't even get OBS to work right, give us a thumbs down. We earned it, and we won't dispute it. But for that, we are going to call it all for this evening. So remember, don't let ignorance stop you. You can root for anything. Unless, at this point, you think someone knowing that sardine oil is what gets a tiger to eat them is just coincidence.
Everybody was kung fu fighting. Those kids were fast as lightning. In fact, it was a little bit frightening. How do I say goodbye to what we had? The good times that made us laugh.